I floated in a black void, nothing around me except boredom and my own thoughts. Funny how a simple grocery run ended with me getting flattened by a truck and dumped into this place. Not that I had anyone waiting for me at home anyway. I passed the time by counting numbers in my head. Real thrilling stuff. Then, without warning, I dropped straight out of the void and slammed onto the floor of a bright white room. I rubbed my back and groaned. Seriously? You couldn't make the landing softer? A voice answered, "Sorry, kid. Didn't mean to drop you that hard." I turned toward the sound and found an old man standing there like he'd been waiting the whole time. I deadpanned. "Please don't tell me you're God, and I'm getting reincarnated." He grinned. "Right on the first try? You're getting another shot at life, since you weren't supposed to die yet." "Of course. Lucky me." I studied him for a moment. "All right then. How do you decide which world I get sent to? And how many wishes? Do I get to keep my memories?" He nodded approvingly. "Good questions. You'll spin a wheel to pick your world. You get 3 wishes, and yes, you keep your memories." I stared at the magical roulette that appeared when he snapped his fingers. Movies, anime worlds, TV shows, everything was on there. I sighed. So my entire future depends on a wheel spin. Wonderful. I spun it. The wheel clicked slowly, then stopped. Underworld. I muttered, huh? Underworld. I watched all the movies. Not bad, though the vampires there are kind of weak. Nothing like TVD or 2. God chuckled. "So what are your wishes? Just make sure you don't break that world's rules. No anime abilities or world-ending powers." I thought it through. All right. First wish. I want to be an original tribrid, similar to Hope Michelson, but with all traits fully active. My only weakness should be Hyaphorba americalis, the loneliest palm tree. The vampires I sire must be loyal to me. No backstabbing. Give me all spells and rituals from the TVD universe. Also, instead of those basic Timberwolf werewolves, give me the Van Helsing werewolf form. His eyebrow went up. That is a very detailed wish, but it's doable. As a werewolf, you'll be an alpha. And yes, I know you plan to turn vampires in that world. I nodded. If I can, I want to turn a few. That's fine, God said. Your chosen partner, though, wife, lover, whatever, won't be bound by sire effects. And you'll be able to have children with underworld vampires. Good. Second wish. Infinite mana, or energy, to fuel my magic and complete control over it. Third wish. Creation magic. Done, he said. But creation magic can't make life. And you must understand what you're creating. That's fine. With my eidetic memory, that wouldn't be a problem. He smiled. Last question. Which timeline do you want to start in? I thought for a moment. 1000 BC. And I'm not starting as a baby. Good luck, kid. He waved his hand. Blackness swallowed me again. When I opened my eyes, I was in the middle of a jungle. I sighed. Where the hell? I tested my speed a few times, adjusting to the new power. Eventually, I reached a pond and froze when I saw my reflection. Chris Hemsworth stared back. I pressed my fingers to my temples. I didn't choose to look like him. Whatever. I used creation magic to make a map, cut my wrist, and perform a locator spell. The blood drifted toward a single direction. Athens. Fantastic, I muttered. Guess I'm building a base first, then recruiting vampires, and teaching them to feed and erase memories. Great start. I took the name Fenris Michelson. The surname felt familiar. In my past life, my father was named Michael, not the psychopath from TVD, thankfully. I didn't think much about it at first, but later I realized Michelson was probably the worst possible name to pick if you cared about fandom reputation. Too late now. My days fell into a routine. I trained my speed and strength first, then dove into spell work. With TVD's complete magical arsenal in my head, I had plenty to practice. Silent casting, telepathy, telekinesis, those became my priorities. After a few tries, I even mastered the teleportation spell Bonnie once used to send messages. She exhausted herself doing it. I, thanks to my infinite mana, barely felt a thing. Eventually, I started building my own faction of vampires. My rules were simple. Feed, then erase memories. Never reveal anything to humans. With that foundation, I created bases across Athens, Italy, Norway, Hungary, and anywhere else that seemed useful. I moved under many names, traveling the world and perfecting my swordsmanship. That reputation is what eventually brought a 14-year-old boy to me, Alexander Corvinus, born in 472 AD. Ambitious kid, wanted to become a great warlord. Right now, he was struggling through his push-ups while I stood over him. "Come on, brat. You've only done 76, I called out. Alexander groaned. "Easy for you to say. You made me run around the entire village first." "Don't give up so easily," I said, watching him push through his exhaustion. "You won't be a warlord, right?" That got him moving again. I didn't care much about random people dying, but those close to me, I wasn't letting them end up as casualties. Not if I could help it. I tossed him a wooden sword. He caught it, panting. I smirked. "Let's see what you've got, brat." I put one arm behind my back just to annoy him. It worked. He attacked blindly, emotional and sloppy. I parried or dodged every swing, letting him tire himself out. His final attempt was a desperate vertical slash. I sidestepped, twisted his arm, and disarmed him easily. He collapsed on the ground, out of breath. I shook my head. "I'm doubling your training." Timeline notes. Alexander Corvinus becomes immortal in 497 AD. Marcus and William are born in 501 AD. William becomes the first werewolf after being bitten in 603 AD. Marcus becomes the first vampire soon after. Victor is turned in 607 AD to hunt William. First vampire coven forms in 625 AD. Eastern Coven founded in 627 AD. Nordic Coven founded in 632 AD. William is captured in 1202 AD. Lucian is born in 1207 AD. Sonia in 1210 AD. Selene in 1383 AD. Rise of the Lycans in 1402 AD. David born between 1980 to 1990. Underworld events occur in 2003. Training Alexander became routine. Swordsmanship, tactics, politics, everything he'd need to rise. I visited other bases now and then, but nothing interesting happened. Eventually, after 2 years, I decided it was time for him to stand on his own. "You're becoming a solid warrior," I told him. "Show me you can become a true warlord by the time I return." He nodded without hesitation. I relocated to my Greek base, but kept an eye on his progress. He worked fast, built his forces, earned loyalty, a warlord by 494 AD, just like he promised. Then came the plague. A single outbreak wiped out everyone in his village except him. I knew what that meant. The Corvinus strain had awakened. Flashback. I found him standing among the dead, staring at his hands. "What am I?" he whispered. "What made you ask that?" I said. He pulled a knife and cut his palm. The wound healed instantly. He met my gaze. "This isn't normal." I sighed. "The plague didn't kill you. It changed you. You're a false immortal now. Unless your head is removed or you take a fatal hit to the heart, you won't die." He studied me. "You're like me. In a way," I said, "but stronger. Much harder to kill." He didn't question it further. I clapped him on the shoulder. "Move forward, brat. You've got a long life ahead of you. Don't let this power twist your mind." "I won't," he promised quietly. Despite my presence, the timeline barely shifted. Alexander still married Helena. Marcus and William were stillborn. Everything unfolded as it should. Satisfied, I decided to check on him again, and on my own people. My vampires were stable, thanks to my second-in-command, Miroslava, a Russian girl I had turned years ago. Reliable, loyal, and ruthless when needed. Everything was moving into place.
Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
Fenris POV, 505 AD. I was now looking at a hand-drawn portrait of Alexander Corvinus, and next to the portrait was a drawing of Helena. I heard the door opening. I saw Alexander with two guards who seemed ready to draw their swords. Alexander shouted, "I know who he is, and leave us be." One guard replied, "But sire." Alexander glared at the guard, which made both the guards go out of the room. I grinned. "So, brat, I heard you got married and already have 2 kids. Alexander mock glared and said, "Stop calling me a brat also. Yes, I did get married. I was trying to find you, but you were nowhere to be found, and yes, I have twins." I smiled. "You will always be a brat for me, and congratulations on your marriage and kids." Alexander smiled at that. For a while, I talked with Alexander as he suddenly went to his table and brought out a Corvinus clan ring. I raised an eyebrow and questioned, "So you want me to have this your clan's symbol?" Alexander nodded. "Yes, this is specifically created. Faking it is really hard, so if my children question your identity, show this." I sighed as I looked at the ring. "You do know I have my clan's ring." Showing him the Norse Viking wolf ring. Alexander muttered, "You can just wear both of them." I shook my head and wore it to appease him. I know he will be bugging me if I don't take this. I played with both the twins from time to time. I don't know if they would remember me, but seeing William, the kind little boy, turn into a mindless beast, I was decided to stop visiting them from then on. I whispered, "This is for the best." I used the spell in Adu, or the hollow used to transform people into werewolves. I created the werewolves, but added something to make it like a sire line and make them loyal. Most people who join my organization or group are given a choice to be a werewolf, vampire, or hybrid. Vampires and hybrids could have children. I had to create moonlight rings to make them able to transform at will. They were like werewolf transformation from Noblesse, but not that powerful. Time skip 1202. I saw the events play out. Both William and Marcus got the gift of immortality from their father, while their little brother was mortal. Helena died soon after, leaving broken Alexander, whose relationship with his children became estranged. In 604 AD, William was bitten by a rabid wolf, turning him into the first of his breed's werewolf, and Marcus was bitten by a bat, which led him to become the first vampire of his breed. William can see what's happening, but can't control his actions. I saw William go on a killing spree, which made Marcus go to the dying Victor for turning him into an immortal in return for his help in getting his brother. I was William continue his rampage and evade the death dealers for 600 years until now. I saw William getting captured, getting Marcus tried to help, but soon found himself alone since all the death dealers were loyal to Victor. When returned to his chambers, Marcus threw his helmet at the wall and started destroying everything, but stopped in between and said, "I know you are in here. Whoever you are, you can come out now." I came out of the shadows as Marcus studied me and muttered, "I have seen you before." I showed my Corvinus clan ring, then it clicked for Marcus. "Grandfather, is that you?" I groaned at that and said, "Stop calling me that, Marcus." That was Alexander's revenge for calling him brat. Marcus had a small smile and said, "Father talked about you after Mother's death. He tried to find you, but couldn't." I sadly smiled at that. "I did meet him just some years after your transformation, which has gotten both of you in trouble." Marcus grimaced and said, "Yes, we never wanted this, and now William is going to be imprisoned for life, and I can't do anything." I asked curiously, "Why not ask your father for help? He is a warlord after all." I knew the answer. Marcus, in anger, replied, "I did, but he said his hands were tied. It is like William's change didn't matter to him." I looked at Marcus and said, "Actually, it is the opposite. Your father's powerful probably could take down all the elders, but he is still one person, and the human army he has will not work." "Marcus, you forgot your father still mourns your mother. He had to see her age and die, unlike you, who can change your lover into a vampire. Your father did not have that liberty." I think mostly Alexander did not know if he would have given Helena his blood. It could have made her immortal, I don't know. I will have to assimilate the Corvinus strain in my body to see the effects. Marcus, who slightly hated his dad for not helping William, started to feel sympathy for his father. Marcus sighed. "So what can we do now with this many immortals? Victor will kill me sooner or later." I smirked. "No, he wouldn't. He fears if you get killed, so will all the vampires die out with you." Marcus smiled and replied, "That's foolish, but I am thankful for it." I explained, "I will try to come with a cure for William soon. but you must create a power base of your own within the vampires. Marcus nodded. I can do that, but what about Victor, his influence with the death dealers and the council? I grinned. Time will come, little Marcus, when you have more influence than Victor. I soon got Alexander's blood, which held the Corvinus strain. I found a spell that lets me assimilate it without any problems that I found out it enhanced my strength and speed. There was lots of potential in the Corvinus strain. The famous Lucian, first of the Lycans, was born in 1207 AD. I did manage to get into the whole slave thing by doing compulsion here. And there also, with that, I was considered a special kind of beast, as Victor calls it. Besides, I was bored and wanted to meet Lucian. But Victor feared me, since I was stronger than any Lycan. But his fears eased when he found out I couldn't create species of my own as Lucian. He foolishly thought I could be taken down with numbers if I ever went rogue. I was training Lucian in hand-to-hand combat as I countered every move Lucian made, then judo flipped him. He quickly recovered from it and came rush to tackle me, which resulted in me throwing him towards the wall. I clapped as I said, "Nice job, Lucian, you have improved." Lucian smiled. "Thanks for the compliment, brother." Yes, he considered me his older brother because I practically raised him. I had the same status as Lucian because I made sure to compel Victor himself to support me. Since when the uprising happens, Victor's power base will have hit a huge dent since he let Lucian and me live. But I told Marcus to not actively support me since I didn't want him to get his influence or power base destroyed. But both Lucian and I had those wretched collars on our necks. I will definitely torture Victor for this. I planned with Marcus to get into Castle since we wanted to cause enough trouble to make the vampires side with. Soon Victor started to use Lucian to get more Lycans to be the daylight guardians of the vampires. I grinned and asked, "I saw the look you were giving Victor's daughter." Lucian didn't look at me, said, "I didn't do anything like." I smirked. "Yes, right? You were only staring at her all the time." Lucian mocked, glared at that. Well, time passed, and Lucian slowly managed to win Sonia's heart. Well, soon Lucian introduced me to her, and I smiled. "Well, it is nice to meet you, Sonia." Sonia, who was nervous at first, then smiled and replied, "It is nice to meet you too, Fenris." I nodded. "Well, Lucian here doesn't shut up about you." Sonia smirked at Lucian. Hearing that, Lucian defended, "No, I do not talk about her all the time." I deadpanned, "Actually, you do talk about her almost all the time. Even in your sleep, I hear the name, Sonia." Sonia smiled at our interaction. "I am sure to have mistaken both of you for brothers." Lucian smiled at that. "Blood or not, he is my brother, the one I can count on." I started to teach Sonia different sword styles whenever we met since she started seeing me as a brother figure. Soon Sonia joined the death dealers. It caused Lucian to worry about her safety. Few years passed as I was able to make some of Lycan's lives a little better. I asked Lucian with slight amusement, "So how's my sister-in-law doing?" Lucian smiled. "She misses you. After all, she does consider you as her brother, just like me." I shook my head and replied, "I will visit her sometime with you." Lucian replied, "She will be happy to hear that." I nodded and asked, "So she's gone patrol again?" Lucian sighed. "I am concerned for her safety. The of Lycans have been increasing." I nodded as Lucian went to the forge. I was doing the same. We both saw Sonia enter through the castle with the other death dealers. We had to make sure everyone had gone before going to meet Sonia. I nodded at him as we both used the underground passageway, then climbed the whole mountain to reach the safe spot. I was waiting with Lucian as Sonia came, who ran and hugged Lucian. I smiled at the two lovers Sonia, then looked at me, said, "It is good to see you again, brother." I nodded. "It is good to see you," to Sonia. As we hugged, I grinned at Lucian and said, "Lover boy here was worried about your safety." Lucian replied, "What anyone would be concerned, even you or Fenris don't lie." I shrugged. Okay, I was concerned as well. We talked for a while as I let the two lovers have their time. I muttered, "I really need to find a lover." I went back to sleep. We had our daily duties as Sonia went on patrol alone that night. I heard howls and roar from the forest. I whispered to Lucian, "The Lycans, they seem to be after something." Lucian realized in horror, "Sonia." I nodded. "You take the bow. I will use the spears." Lucian didn't waste a second as he took the bow. I took 4 spears with me. We saw her coming out of the woods with 7 Lycans on her tail. I readied myself, then threw the spear, killing the Lycan. I took down 3 more in a similar fashion. Lucian killed 2 with his bow. One almost entered the castle. We both jumped next to the Lycan's body. Victor came with guards. I heard Sonia questioned, "Have you nothing better to do, blacksmiths, than play with weapons of war?" Victor asked his daughter, "A little gratitude to the ones that saved your life." I snorted, "Yeah, right." The bastard approves his daughter's attitude towards Lucian and me just now. I heard him ask Lucian how he felt about killing his own kind. This bastard is really going to get it when the time comes, just have to wait for a little more. I was burning the body of the Lycan with Lucian as I asked him, "Do you really feel nothing when you kill these Lycans?" Lucian smiled sadly. "I don't know what to feel, though. We both come from the same bloodline. We're slaves while they're nobles." I couldn't agree with him more. The funny thing is Marcus doesn't hold hatred against the Lycans, but his influence is only starting to grow. He had people in the council like Kalaman and Ursova who are trying to make Victor's rule seem bad. I saw Costa. He was the guard that looked after the Lycan prisoners. He whips them for small things. He takes pleasure in hurting Lycans. Now he was whipping Zristo. I stopped Costa from whipping Christo any further as I slammed Costa into the wall and said that was enough. Costa's hands were trembling. This idiot was scared of me. I read his mind. This idiot saw me killing a guard. He knows I am stronger than the elders combined, and he does not want to be the next victim. Lucian, who was next to me, said, "As my brother said, that was enough." Costa somehow gained enough courage and yelled, "You won't be Victor's favorite for all the time." I glared at him as he ran away quickly. I was helping out the other Lycans. The day was coming to an end when I saw 2 idiot guards torturing Sabas. Christo tried to intervene, but getting slashed by the silver sword weakened him. I sped next to one of the guards, snapped his neck, and plunged my arm straight through the armor and chest, took the heart out of the other as both of them fell on the floor. Both were grateful. Christo spoke first. "This is the second time you saved me, but you will be punished if they find out." I shook my head and replied, "I will take care of it. You guys go." Sabas said, "We can help." I waved my hand, replied, "You guys have injuries, that 2 from silver, which will weaken you." Both wanted to help, but understood and went to their cell. I killed guards here and there to release some of my anger. The idiots are still searching for the supposed enemy who attacks them. I just teleport their bodies to the desert where their body will be reduced to nothing. I was working with Lucian, making swords for the death dealers as Lucian came near me and whispered, "I made a duplicate key for our shackles." I saw the key he made and asked, "You want to escape? What about Sonia?" Lucian looked around and said, "We can live a better life outside these walls, and I'm going to talk to Sonia about this tonight. Will you come with me, brother?" I nodded and replied, "Do what you must, but remember Sonia has a tough decision. She loves you, but leaving her father will be hard even for her. And what about all the other Lycans?" Lucian was in deep thought after hearing what I said. Soon he went to meet Sonia, while I was thinking about the future since I eliminated Marcus and William being enemies. I knew there was going to be a war soon between the Lycans and vampires, even if I saved Sonia. Victor will not take it, laying down the fact that Lycans took over Corvina's castle, so war is inevitable. I was waiting for Lucian, who came with Sonia with him. As she was leaving, I muttered, "Things are going to get problematic." Lucian and Sonia looked at me in confusion as I pointed at Tanis. I held back Lucian, who seemed ready to kill Tanis. "Don't he is really close with Victor. His disappearance will cause doubts. Since he has been sent by Victor, call Sonia, which will make her a suspect. If it is some unknown guard, I would have just killed him then and there." I looked at Sonia and said, "Check what he wants. From what I know, he wants a place in the council." Sonia nodded and went. Lucian, who was next to me, said, "I hope everything goes well." I replied, "Me too, brother." As we suspected, Tanis wanted Sonia's seat in the council. The next night, Sonia was getting ready for receiving the nobles. Lucian tried to tell her to make someone else do it, but didn't work. I went next to Lucian and muttered, "Sonia is too stubborn. Once she decides something, she will follow it through." Lucian just laughed at that. We were working when I heard the roar from the forest. I looked at Lucian and asked, "Did you hear that?" Lucian nodded. "This is not just a group of Lycans. They are all attacking together." Lucian warned the guards, "Get your men out there now." The guard laughed. "Down, boy, your leash is too tight." I yelled, "You idiots, the no of Lycans are not something a small group of death dealers can fight." Lucian pitched in, "Yes, they will be massacred." I shouted, "Lucian, get the horse." As I jumped through the rider, the horse Lucian followed. We both rode. We had to dodge a couple of ballistas. We reached the location to see the death dealers being swarmed by huge of Lycans. Lucian jumped on one of the Lycans and took a sword and started to slice one Lycan after another. I transformed my hands into werewolf ones and sped to each one of Lycans, performing heart extraction or slashing their throats. But soon Lucian and I saw the number of Lycans increasing. I can survive this, but Lucian and Sonia won't. Lucian took the key and unlocked his shackle and threw the key towards me. I did the same. I heard Sonia yell, "Both of you don't do this." Lucian transformed and roared, which stopped all the Lycans. But my transformation resembles a monstrous wolf-like creature with a lupin body covered in fur, as well as razor-sharp teeth and claws. My roar echoed throughout the forest, making all the Lycans submit. Reyes and Sonia looked in awe as they saw all the Lycans bent their head and retreat. Both Lucian and I were shot with silver arrows. I shrugged it off, but Lucian was weakened and transformed back to normal. I transformed back and grabbed clothing from a dead slave and went next to Lucian. I saw Victor come with his guards. Seeing him, I was mostly thinking, this is boring. They really are super weak, acting all high and mighty. I was pulling out the silver arrows from his back, which is causing him immense pain. Sonia tried to defend both of us. They did it to save me. Victor sneered at Lucian and me. Am I not the master of the house? Victor slapped Lucian, then turned to slap me, but I glared at him with my eyes glowing red. Every fiber of Victor's being was saying death is near and not to do anything foolish. Victor slowly stepped back, but then saw all the death dealers around him were stunned that he was scared of me. I smirked at that. Victor tried to regain some of his dignity. "You both know you are forbidden to remove your shackle." Lucian spoke, "Yes." I gave Victor an indifferent look, tried to make him attack, which gives me more than enough reason to rip his arms off. Victor, who had some good instincts, and said, "Yet you both break my law after I gave both of you your life." I snorted and thought, "You're what a nice life you gave us." Victor tried to act all-powerful. Then both of us were led back to the castle. We both were tied. I didn't resist, since these idiots still haven't noticed silver has no effect on me. I saw Costa shout, "By removing the collar, 30 lashes each." I whispered to Lucian, "Lucian, okay, just act like you are in pain." Lucian understood what he was talking about, slightly nodded. I saw Victor coming towards us. He looked at Lucian and said, "You have stung me, Lycan, with your betrayal. You were like a son to me. I gave you your life." I looked at Victor as if he is an idiot. "Yet you treated him as a son, really." I saw the collar around his neck. "Don't act as if you were betrayed. Just go away." Lucian snorted, "Like my brother said, you gave me chains." Victor looked at me, trying to put up an act. "You will die soon for your behavior." I smirked at him. "We will see." I glared at him. My eyes once again glowed. This made Victor flinch and step back, which was seen by all the Lycans and vampires in the courtyard. I heard a voice behind me. It was Costa. "I told you both I fell." I cut him off. "Just get on with it. I am getting sleepy." Lucian was looking at Sonia's window. I saw Coleman looking at me. I gave a slight nod. He returned it. I closed my eyes, mentally told Lucian to act like the whips were hurting him. Lucian looked at me and nodded as I cast a spell to protect him, also made to create an illusion of his wounds. After 5 strikes, Costa tried to whip me. I simply froze everyone with telepathy, then made a fake memory of the whipping, so they didn't get any reaction from me. I opened my eyes to see Zrito and Sabas try to fight, but was stopped by the guards. I shook my head, telling them not to do anything. Zrito and Sabas both grimaced at that. Both wanted help, but couldn't. Who would have known I would find more people here? They became loyal to me by a small act of kindness. Vampires POV. Victor was going back to the castle as Coleman came and said, "Stop this, both are our protectors, and you yourself can see Fenris isn't even showing any kind of reaction." Victor replied, "They're mindless beasts, and Fenris is just holding in the pain. He is not strong as us." Coleman looked at Victor seriously. "The others will stir because of this." Victor replied, "Let them stir." "Do you fear them, Coleman? And it will be worse if we do not punish them." Coleman pointed at Fenris, said, "I don't fear them, but Fenris, yes, I fear him." Victor couldn't come up with anything since he knew in the back of his mind he is afraid of Fenris from the very beginning. But something in Victor's mind was yelling at him as if it was telling him not to do it. But Victor's ego won and decided to go through with it. Victor decided to switch the subject. I will take care of both Fenris and Lucian myself. As Victor went away, Kalaman muttered, I hope you are right, Victor. Fenris POV. The fake memory did the trick. I saw Lucian act like he was weak because of his silver, and his back was bloodied with wounds that I was untied of my shackles. As I went towards Lucian, all his wounds were just an illusion. I pushed away from the guard who untied Lucian. I was carrying him back to the cell with 2 guards behind my back. That I took him inside the cell, waited as the guards went away. I smirked and said, didn't even sting right. Lucian, who got up as the illusion wore off, replied, thanks for everything, brother. I shook my head and said, nothing, I will be there when you need me, little brother. Lucian smiled at that. I saw Rays bring steel bowl of water towards us and said, you can have it since you need more than I do. I nodded and gave it Lucian, who drank it. I had a bowl extended towards me by Seabass and Zristos, who smirked, we can't have our leader thirsty, can we? I questioned in amusement, leader, when did that happen? Saba spoke with full confidence. Both Lucian and you are the only ones we see fit to lead us. I looked at Lucian, who smiled at me. I was leaning against the wall with Lucian sitting on the opposite. I heard Lucian ask Rays, I saw what you did out there. You were very brave for a human. I nodded and said, yes, you fought against a Lycan with bare hands. It is a big accomplishment for a human. Ray smiled at both Lucian and me. I looked and Sabas and Zristo, who was in the next cell. You guys tried to intervene. That makes you brave as well. Both of them smiled and nodded at me. Rays, Sabas, and Zristo came and sat next to our cells. Lucian asked Rays, have you come across them before? Rays spoke, only in stories. Lucian asked curiously, were you not afraid of them? Yes, I was, but I wanted to live. Lucian asked, are you afraid of me and my brother? Rays looked at us and said yes. Lucian smiled and replied, then don't be, I won't bite. Much I laughed, he is puppy once you get to know him. Lucian mock glared as Rays, Sabas, and Zristo laughed at that. Rays questioned, are you like them? Lucian replied instantly, no, a Lycan, but not like them. Those you fought with tonight were animals, the spawn of William Purebloods, if you will, no trace of the human left. Rays asked curiously, what about your brother? His form looked different. Lucian smirked. My brother is different, stronger than any Lycan. You must have noticed how even Victor is afraid of him. Sabas and Zristo nodded and asked, so what is he? All I said was, I'm the first werewolf/vampire hybrid. I lived before Alexander Corvinus. I trained the little brat. I knew him when he was human. I'm stronger than any Lycan or vampire in existence. I left the part out. I kill all the vampires in the castle. Rays asked, so you're older than any vampires or Lycans? I nodded. I knew your great-grandfather, Rays. He was Sultan Ramshir, right? Rays was stunned hearing that we talked for a while, since Rays wanted to know more about his great-grandfather, until Sabas asked, you could escape any time, right? I replied, yes, I can. Zristo asked, so what are you waiting for? I said, escaping by myself is easy, but to make sure all of you escape is a whole different thing. I did lie since I want them at least to stand up for their freedom. Giving them everything is not a good idea. All three smiled at that. Rays looked at me and Lucian. Lucian, you made all the Lycans stop, while Fenris made all the Lycans submit. They obeyed you completely. Lucian thought and said, yes, they did. The nice thing about Lucian is not jealous of my strength or abilities. Sonia soon came to our prison cell and whispered, you both are in here. Because of me, it is my fault if I had not gone out. Lucian cut in, then you would not be who you are. I smiled. Lucian is right, little sister. You don't have to worry about us. I saw her go after speaking to us. I whispered to Lucian, little brother, she is taking a great risk, especially when she is pregnant. Lucian looked at me and asked, is that true? I nodded. Lucian smiled, but then got serious. This makes me worried about her safety. We must get her out. I smirked. I already have a plan. I was sleeping as I heard two idiots fighting over a piece of morsel. I growled as my eyes turned red. You imbeciles, you're making yourself some kind of puppet for their entertainment. This made every Lycan stop what they were doing, started to look in my direction. Lucian nodded and said, We are not animals, and we are not their pets, and we should not be fighting amongst ourselves. Lucian continued, both me and my brother lived by their rules our entire lives. We protected them, envied them, and for what to be treated like an animal. Both I let Lucian take the stage. We can be more than this. We can either be slaves for our entire lives, or we can be Lycans. It thundered in the walls of the prison. Reyes, Sabas, and Zristo smiled at this. They knew a rebellion is starting. I was thinking about one thing. I have to let Sonia and Lucian be captured. Since Sonia still holds the hope of her father accepting their child, which is not possible, she has to see herself that her father will sentence her to death with no problem. I muttered, I fucking don't care about the timeline after this. I saw Lucian, who was escorted by a guard probably towards Sonia. I was humming a tune of a song I knew in my past life, that I saw Reyes being escorted for him to be transformed into a Lycan. Soon Lucian returned and started making sure no one is listening. I got a key for our shackles. We can escape tonight. I nodded my head. Give the key to the other Lycans once you're done. Reyes was brought back to the cell, asked, they turned us into, like you. Lucian nodded as he was keeping a watch for the guards. Reyes questioned, why? I simply answered, they call us the Daylight Guardians. They just are using us for their protection. Reyes in anger said, I would die before that happens. Lucian, who was checking if the coast is clear, replied, while they may not happen, our time has come at sunrise. We leave this place. Anyone willing to take the risk can follow us. I pitched in, you can just stay here or rot in prison or try to get your freedom. I looked towards Sabas and Zristo, who already relayed the message. I was now waiting for Costa, who came for his patrol. New dogs today, let's see how they look. Zristo smirked, you come too late. Both of them are gone. Costa, who quickly came to our cell, only seeing the shackles, didn't bother to check if the cell is really empty. Just as he entered the cell, I plunged my hand through his armor and chest, grabbing his heart. I whispered, what did you tell Lucian? I will be there when you fall. Well, you won't be even alive after this. I crushed his heart and then looked at the body of Costa as all Lycans started to remove their shackles, yelled, let's go, move out. As all of them started, were handed light vests for armor. I took Sabas and Zristo with me, as we went to make sure the way was clear, as some guards who heard the commotion came towards us, as I simply used telekinesis to tear their hearts off. I told Sabas, you go with Zristo and free the others. I looked at Lucian, you go lead them, I will take care of the ballista. Lucian nodded as he went with rest. I sped towards the ballistas, which were being already started firing, gestured with my hands as I started to telekinetically float all the ballistas. Then I performed a crushing motion as all the ballistas got destroyed. The vampires were stunned when they saw me. I grinned and taunted them, which made all of them rush at me. I sped towards them, killing the first one by smashing him to the wall with full force, killing him instantly, and sped to the next, who tried to slash me with his sword. I dodged to plunge my hand into his chest, taking his heart one by one. I killed all the guards who were on the ballistas. I then saw Lucian jump from the castle. I jumped next to him and saw almost all the Lycan prisoners had escaped, but some were still inside. That I saw Victor looking at both of us with rage. I saw that the sword that was next to me took it, felt the balance, then I threw it right at the guard standing next to him. Victor was shocked and looked at me with fear as he quickly went inside. I smirked and muttered, run, little vampire, run. I followed Lucian to the forest, who was telling the Lycans they need to raid the castle. Zristo asked, we don't have any weapons. I shrugged and replied, I will take care of the weapons. Lucian said, looking at everyone, as you heard, my brother will take care of our weapons. Lucian and I slowly managed to make everyone ready to storm the castle. Soon, I started to create better armor and weapons for all the Lycans who had agreed to fight. I was talking with Reyes about what our plan of action when Luca, who was friends with Sonia, came. Sonia has been arrested. He knows about Lucian and her. Lucian whispered, hearing this, he is going to kill her. Lucian was getting more worried. I'm going to go get her out. I replied, holding him back. You know this is a trap, and I can go there instead of you. Lucian replied, and his voice broke. I don't care if it is a trap. She is with my child brother. I can't let her die, and please let me go. I sighed and nodded. This idiot will not listen to me. Lucian went for getting Sonia. As I went to Lycan's den, I entered as more and more Lycans showed up in front of me. My canine slightly elongated and eyes glowed red. As I growled, it was enough to make them understand who I was, since they had already submitted to me before I just have slightly enforced it. I really don't think we need their help. but it will boost their morale greatly if they see these Lycans fighting together with them. With that part of the plan taken care of, I teleported back to the camp. I walked towards Reyes, Sabas, and Zristo and said, "You guys be ready for the signal. I will be back with Lucian. Soon we will have to raid that castle and free the others." All of them nodded as I soon teleported to the castle and cloaked myself. I saw the events unfold as Lucian and Sonia fighting against all the vampires, but Lucian was soon overwhelmed while Sonia was trying to make Victor understand she is with a child, but Victor was seeing it as an abomination. I sighed. She had to hear it herself, otherwise she will hold the hope of one day Victor accepting them. Well, soon Victor managed to disarm Sonia and took her prisoner. I was watching the council decide Sonia's fate, hearing about the stupid bloodline, unlike the film where Kalaman and Ursova were the ones who sentenced her death. But here both subtly tried to reduce the sentence to imprisonment, but everyone wanted her death. They couldn't do anything, I sighed. How did Marcus even deal with this shit? I should really congratulate him for surviving this stupid environment. Sonia held hope that her father would not vote in favor of killing her, only to that to be broken when she heard him vote yes. I saw Victor acting all sad, but the bastard cared too much about blood purity than his own daughter. I saw Sonia being shackled to a stone pillar, and Lucian was forced to watch her burned, and I saw soon all the council members going away, with only 2 guards here had their heads ripped off with telekinesis. I uncloaked myself, Sonia, who saw me, her eyes lit up with hope. "Brother, you came to save us." I shrugged. "Of course I did, stupid little sister." I broke her shackles and led her towards the shadows. I heard her whisper, "My own father condemned me to death. I held hope once he knew about our child, he would at least stand with me, but I was too naive." I went towards Lucian and fed him my blood, who is healing. "Thank you for coming, brother, otherwise I would have really lost her and my child." I just nodded and said, "I will take Sonia to a safe house. Do you still want to fight Lucian?" Lucian with determination. "If I don't get Victor for this, I would always have nightmares about losing her." I teleported with Sonia to one of my castles in Greece. She looked confused, as just now she was in Corvinus castle. Next thing she knew, she was in a different chamber. I told her, "I will explain once this is over." Sonia just nodded as I called out Moreau. Miroslava quickly sped towards me and kneeled in front of me. "Lord Fenris, what can I do for you?" I ordered. "Moreau, look after Lady Sonia for me." Moreau immediately nodded and escorted Sonia, who knew I was keeping her safe but seemed to want answers. I said, looking at Sonia, "I will be back soon. Ask anything you need to Moreau. She will get it for you. Also, your father may or may not survive the battle." Sonia sneered. "He condemned me to death for loving a man from another bloodline, which means he values that even more than his own daughter." I nodded. This is what I wanted. I didn't want her to have hope of Victor someday accepting their child. I didn't really involve my vampires or werewolves with some show of superiority over the human's mind, mostly work in shadows, since if vampires and werewolves are discovered in the future, first thing they check are the rumors or myths are true, which are already written: vampires weak to sun and werewolves weak to silver. I could protect my species easily by creating a cloaked island with magic. Even removing the memories of all humans will not be a problem, but being cautious is not a problem. I created a fake body of burnt Sonia, since I knew that Bastard Victor will not stop hunting her, and the child is not even a hybrid. Yes, it has the blood of the 2 species, but not the traits of the 2, since they need a Corvinus strain. I was waiting for Victor to show up, and soon he did. When Victor didn't see Lucian, he quickly went to Sonia's burnt body to look for the key to William's prison. I said, coming out from the shadow, "Looking for this." I showed Victor the necklace. Victor and his guards immediately went defensive. Victor yelled in rage, "Give that back to me, you beast." I indifferently asked, "What is so special about this that you went straight to look at this than seeing your daughter's burnt body?" Victor didn't say anything. I told Victor, "Why don't you bring all your little death dealers and guards to the castle courtyard and try to take this from me?" I jumped out through the window and went to the courtyard. I had destroyed all the useless things there to create a place for the fight that I was waiting for them as I was whistling and sharpening my werewolf claws. Think Victor from X-Men, the Origins Wolverine, sharpening his claws. I mentally thought, these idiots think they're the strongest. Let's give them a wake-up call. I saw them enter the courtyard. I thought of reducing the crowd a bit. I muttered enough for them to hear. let the massacre begin. I let out a growl as my canines elongated and eyes turned red and sped right towards Victor's little army. It was practically a blur as Fenris started to dominate them, tearing all of them one by one. It was a bloodbath as a trail of dead bodies was left in his aftermath by decapitation, heart extraction, or my werewolf bite, which proved very lethal for them. I saw the fear in Victor's eyes as he saw all his death dealers were getting slaughtered. He was trying to call for more of his guards, that I was simply evading all their sword strikes while plunging my hand into their chest and taking their hearts out or ripping their heads off. Victor tried to run as used telekinesis to hold him in place. I only saw 2 death dealers in front of Victor, whose hands were trembling as they saw my whole body was bathed in blood. I looked at myself. Well, after this, I have to take bath when I return. I walked over the bodies of death dealer and went towards them. They both threw their sword and kneeled. Let us live, we will not go against you ever. I needed some idiots to tell the tale of what happened here, but some had already seen what happened and ran to ship, so these 2 really had bad luck. I smiled at them. Is that so? Both the vampires got up and nodded. We promise. I snapped my fingers as their heads were ripped off. I walked towards Victor, who was looking at me as if I was a demon. While a part of it is true, I can see his whole body shaking with fear. I grinned at Victor and asked, "Little vampire, what happened to all that air of superiority?" Victor opened his mouth to answer. Nothing was coming out, but soon spoke. Wah. What are you?" I smirked. "I am Fenris Mycoslan, the original hybrid. Since witches didn't exist, I left that part out. I let them think it is one of my abilities." I gestured as 3 swords started to float from the dead bodies of the death dealers. As I pointed at Victor, the words launched themselves, pining him like Jesus. Victor, who was crying in pain, "Please, stop, I will make you an elder." I shook my head and said, "Nah, I am not interested." I held out my hand as I telekinetically ripped the part of William's key inside of Victor had on his chest. Victor was weak because of losing a large amount of blood. As I muttered, "Can't have you die like this, can we?" I removed the swords, did a small healing spell, then compelled him to forget about me ever taking the key from him. I then stepped back and started to transform into my werewolf form and gave a full roar, which signaled the rebellion start. I really feel let down since I didn't even use my werewolf form in battle. I sighed. At least I will use it in the next battle. There are close to 5,000 vampires in the castle. Only a few are part of the council or aristocratic vampires, and the rest are members of death dealers or guards. Now it is reduced to just 2,000 vampires or so who are majority guards and small part council members. I already compelled Tanis to move the elders with Kalaman and Ursova. I had my fun as I saw all the Lycans, both Lucians and Williams, coming towards the castle. While I destroyed their fun, I saw Lucian jump next to me and ask, "Where's Victor?" I shrugged and said, "He's going to the docks. He is severely weakened. Have fun." I saw Lucian run in that direction, and everyone was easily tearing apart the remaining guards and council members. I teleported to see the fight between Victor and Lucian, in which Lucian clearly had the upper hand against weakened Victor. I had lost interest in fight since I saw Lucian was clearly winning. I teleported to see how the other Lycans are doing. Almost all guards and death dealers in Castle Corvinus died. Only some survived the outcome, like a few death dealers and guards who saw the massacre and were so scared they ran to the ship. Then there are some old, useless aristocratic vampires. Then elders like Marcus and Amelia were safe. Then there are some council people like Kalaman or Sova, etc., who were sent to the ship during the massacre. I knew Marcus's progeny had already moved to another Eastern Coven, so had Amelia's also. I didn't see Craven or Soren. They were not in Castle Corvinus. I saw the aftermath of the battle the Lycans were hearing for both Lucian and me. The casualty on the Lycan side was very low, and I asked Lucian who came near me, "So, did you finish him off?" Lucian nodded and replied, "Yes, he is taken care of. He won't survive a stab in the back of the head." When I heard that, part one could only sigh and think, so he is alive and escaped. I thought having him weakened and Lucian in full strength will at least make sure Victor is dead for sure. Author's note: this is my way of keeping him alive. Sorry if it is boring. I asked Lucian with a smile, "So ready to go meet Sonia?" I left the 3 Rays, Sabas, and Zristo in charge while I took Lucian with me to meet Sonia. I teleported him with me, which was weird for him, but I told him I will tell him everything. Lucian was soon led to Sonia. They hugged and kissing each other as I coughed, getting their attention. I said, looking at both of them, "Yes, you can continue this after I'm gone." Lucian nodded and asked, "So what was that we were outside castle? The next thing I know we are here." I nodded and answered, "Well, remember I told you I am a hybrid?" Lucian nodded. I explained to them the difference between their species and mine. Sonia asked with awe, "So you're older than Alexander Corvinus. Also, you have 2 species of immortals under your command, so why not take over the humans as Victor did?" I replied, smiling, "Humans won't be weak all the time. There will be a time when vampire and Lycans will be forced to hide from them." Sonia didn't believe they will be forced to hide from humans. The weapons humans make can kill Lycans and vampires in seconds, and I am not stupid to just make my species a target. We may have a physical advantage, but humans still outnumber us, and will build weapons that would easily kill any vampire or Lycan. I internally thought that was what would have happened if I was not here. I answered their questions as much as I can now. The second thing is I called Yara. "Did you send both vampires and werewolves to guard William's prison?" Yara nodded. "Yes, my lord, we have the place guarded." I was fine with that. The only problem was that I have no idea where Celine and family is. Even compelling Victor the first found out the place they used to live. The place didn't have anything of them since their whole house was destroyed. That I did find them after some searching, and I left a few vampires to protect them. I had left Lucian and Sonia to do their thing. That I teleported back to the castle. I asked Zristo, "What is the situation?" He replied, "Some left to go on their own, while the majority wanted to stay with us." I nodded. That's good since this is far from over. Over the months, we managed to make it easier for the Lycans to settle and made a couple of rules to follow. Second grade vampires POV. Victor, who reached another base in Romania, awakened all elders who were now having a meeting. Marcus was putting serious face, was internally jumping with joy, asked, "So from the memories, we saw you were on the reasons the rebellion happened, because during mine or Amelia's reign, we never caused the Lycans to stir like that." Amelia nodded and said, "What Marcus speaks is the truth, Victor. You took your hate for the Lycans get to your head. Instead of punishing the Lycan Lucian or his brother Fenris for saving Sonia, you could have let them with a warning. Also, I understand Sonia was with Lucian's child, but you could have taken care of that secretly." Marcus was internally laughing, like hell that would happen. Victor couldn't come up with anything. His defeat at the hands of the Lycan Lucian and his demon brother was fresh in his mind. Amelia continued on the topic of Fenris. "I do not know what he is, but to kill more than 2,500 soldiers is not something to just forget, especially since he didn't turn into his werewolf form. Only blessing is he can't create something similar to himself." Marcus internally thought, "You're right, I know my grandfather. I'm sure his own species of wolf somewhere. He is not into reigning humans like you two." Victor said with irritation, "Now is not the time to blaming me. We have to find a way to kill both those beasts, and we have to close the mouths of every member who survived this ordeal, so no tale of his actions are spoken." Marcus once again thought, "Not going to happen. I already started the rumor of your defeat, and no casualties." Marcus didn't fucking care about the vampire species. To him, family meant everything. Even his estranged father and him were mending their relationship. Amelia looked at Marcus and asked, "So what is your thoughts on this war Victor wants to wage?" Marcus spoke, acting with full seriousness. "I am not joining this war. Since Victor started this mess, let him finish it. Also, with how powerful Fenris is, I don't think killing him will be easy." Amelia also nodded and said, "True, Victor, this war is your problem. We are not going to get involved in it." Amelia's thoughts were more in the line, "My lover is involved in the war." Victor gritted his teeth and said, "I will bring both their heads." Marcus thought, looking, "Yeah, like hell that is going to happen. Also, William is soon going to free of his fucking prison, you bastard." Well, the legend of Red-Eyed Wolf started from there soon. All the council members, the oldest death dealers, soon knew about it. At first, they thought it was a rumor, but seeing the survivors of the massacre, they became convinced the rumor is true. I was with Lucian fighting an army of vampires who were causing problems for us. We managed to kill all of them. I was walking towards the army commander, who was mentally laughing at us. "You fools. Lord Victor made this army just for diversion." When I heard this, I knew for what purpose teleported to Celine's location, only to find that the Corvinus vampires are everywhere. I rushed inside to see Victor having already killed both her parents and was ordered Craven to finish off her sister as I sped and took Craven by the throat and compelled him. You have just killed the girl Cecilia, and now you will go and report back to Victor and forget about ever seeing me here. I looked at Celine's sister Cecilia, who was stabbed in the stomach. I took her and teleported her away from the place to Castle Lycan as I fed her my blood to heal her. I was mentally thinking, so Victor found them even when I changed their location, also sacrificed all those death dealers to kill Celine's family. So he fears us getting William out of his prison. I found the vampires I posted here to keep a watch on them had let their guard down since nothing happened to them, and when a feed, I must say the timing is really bad. Cecilia only woke up the next day, and she was mourning her parents' death. I could do a resurrection spell, but not sure if it will work. I heard Cecilia was tearing up, asked, "Why did they kill my father and mother?" I sighed and explained, "Your father was asked to build a prison for Victor, whose location was something Victor didn't want anyone to know. So he killed all who knew about its location to keep it a secret." I showed her William's prison key and asked, "Do you remember this?" Cecilia recognized the key since she used to play with that. Cecilia whispered, "But what about my sister? Why did they take her?" I sighed and replied, "I don't know, we will find out soon." Cecilia, who now looked at me, asked, "Who are you?" I gave small smile and replied, "I am Fenris Michael's son." Cecilia raised an eyebrow and said, "I remember our village leader talking about how the Lycan attacks and taxes will be less since Lord Fenris and Lord Lucian have taken over Castle Corvinus. I remember we went to the nobles to make them stop paying us silver and tell them the werewolf won't hurt them since they have taken over. Everyone was skeptical, but soon saw that the werewolf attacks were less, so they started to pay us tribute. I internally thought, after all, Victor really had good lying if he made Celine believe it was Lycans that killed their parents. Also, I doubt Celine will question Victor's story after Victor is her savior. Added to that, fear of werewolves have been in the people's mind for so long that it is not easy to make that go away. I was in my study as I had Lucian and Sonia with me. It was Lucian who first spoke, so Victor was killing everyone who knew about the location of William's prison because we had the key to it. I nodded and said, "That is what happened. Victor killed the parents of the girl I saved." Sonia sighed, "My father is gone. In his place is a power-hungry man." I couldn't tell her that was not true, so I changed the subject. "So how is the baby? You have talked to my healers, right?" Sonia smiled. "Yes, the baby is safe." Lucian looked at me with full gratitude. "It is because of you, brother, that both my wife and child are safe." I waved my hand and replied, "No need for that." I asked curiously, "So what is the plan for what I know Victor is planning for war, but the other two elders are not supporting it?" Lucian, who looked thoughtful, replied, "Sonia is not coming back, that is for sure, since from what you told me, Victor believes her to be dead, which is good and I can finish this war." I nodded at that. I finished my meeting with both of them as I visited Reyes, who asked, "So how is Lucian doing?" I replied, "He is fine and will come back soon, but I have info on the vampires. Bring Sabis and Zristo." Soon all of them arrived as I explained the situation to them as Zristo asked, "So Victor is the only one who wants to go to war with us while the other two are not interested?" I nodded. "Yes, so the numbers will be not that much, or Victor will start recruiting and turning people." Sabis asked curiously, "So what do we do now? We abase, but the food is a problem." I shook my head and said, "Food and weapons are not a problem, but we have to train the Lycans. Once Lucian comes back, you guys will train them." Reyes replied, "Yes, that is a good idea." I changed Cecilia into an original vampire, making her stronger than normal. Soon she completed her transition, and I started to train her, and Lucian went back to Castle Corvinus to take care of the Lycans. Victor will not attack, at least not until he gets more vampires. As months went by, as I was teaching Cecilia how to control her thirst, compulsion, etc., I heard Cecilia ask, "How is my sister? Do you have any news about her?" I sighed and replied, "Your sister is being trained to become a death dealer." Cecilia was angry at the fact that the killer of their parent is using her sister, as she asked, "When can we get my sister out of there?" I was thoughtful as I replied, "It will take time, as Celine is literally brainwashed by Victor, so even if you show up and tell her the truth, I doubt she would believe you." Cecilia knew her sister well. Just like Lord Fenris said Cecilia is said to have died, so Celine will consider the whole thing a ploy by Lord Fenris or the Lycans. She won't acknowledge and will just attack since she regards Victor as her stepfather and savior. Soon the whole training was finished as Cecilia went to her room and I went to my study and decided to continue my hybridization. I only used a spell to fully take in the blood of Marcus, William, and Lucian thanks to the Corvinus strain. I basically got more powerful. I had wings like Marcus had, which is hideous, but my werewolf form is more powerful than S.O. I decided to use the blood of the Filipino eagle for modifying the wings, then have the chitinous carapace to provide a protective layer for my skin, making it impenetrable. Axolots for their regenerative healing factor that grants me the ability to fully regenerate all my organs as long as my brain is still functioning. Tiger bloodline to make me stronger, and my claws are made to curve in and dig into the already stabbed place of flesh and muscle that I decided to stop with that for now. I muttered, these abilities will help me a lot, but I must take up Vidar's offer. Vidar was the founder of the Nordic Coven. I then went to see Vidar from the Nordic Coven. I was friends with him and the whole Nordic Coven, who was also known as Vardor. They had an interesting ritual that they accidentally found, and that became a sacred ritual for them, which was special only to their coven. The Vardor sacred ritual is a special and sacred ritual used exclusively by the vampires of the Nordic Coven in order to reach what they call the sacred world, also known as Valisa, and the in-between place, a parallel plane of higher consciousness where they achieve inner clarity and a greater perception of things that even transcends death itself. I became friends with them since they are more independent than the other covens, as they did not answer to the council and lived as they wished, away from the politics and the wars among the species. It was during the 10th century, I believe I met them. Flashback. I asked, Vidar, have you went through the sacred ritual? Vidar smiled. Yes, I did. Do you want to try it? I replied, no, at least not yet. Vidar smiled, said, you know, your appearance in our coven first made us really suspicious, but Lena, who can read souls, couldn't read yours, but she did find you had a spiritual connection like no other. I could only guess it was my witch side. I nodded, asked, so what made you trust me? Vidar smiled and replied, my daughter is a good judge of character. She found you to be not an enemy, and I believe her. During your stay here, you never once asked for our secrets. You only ever asked why we chose to exclude ourselves from the rest of vampire covens. Also, you are the friend of the coven, so you do not have to worry about us telling the council. I smiled. Thank you, my friend, and I will take your offer of doing the scared ritual when I come here next time to see you, my friend. Flashback ended. Vidar, who saw me in the courtyard, smiled. Old friend, you have come back. I nodded and replied, I have been busy. Vidar laughed and said, yes, heard about your little escapade. Have to say we expected something like this to happen a long time ago. Our coven never has enslaved Lycans. I smiled and replied, yes, I know, and I just wanted to tell you Marcus opting for your way of life. I don't know about Amelia. Vidar nodded and replied, that is good news now. Are you ready to do the sacred ritual? I nodded. The ritual is pretty interesting. A vampire must first take a poison, nightshade, then he or she to be cocooned and submerged in water. The ritual is called Valisa, the in-between place that allows them to visit this sacred world, basically a spiritual realm. I saw Lena, who smiled and asked, your spiritual connection really is fascinating. I nodded and replied, yes, it's something I was born with. And let me guess, Lena is the one who is going to be performing the ritual. Vidar just smiled at me. I was taken to the Undercroft. It is a crypt underneath the castle halls, similar to a temple where the Nordic vampires go to meditate and perform their sacred rituals. There are several pools and fountains in this area. Lena was the one who was doing the cocooning process for me instead of nightshade. I drank vervain to weaken myself. I was completely cocooned. I heard Lena speak, praise the day when it ends. Praise the ice when it holds. Praise the sword when it kills. Praise the life that has lived, and after that, I had fallen into a state of deep sleep. I woke up feeling overwhelmed. My senses had become sharper, and I had slowly regained control of it. I slowly sat up and looked at Lena. I could see her past, present, and future. He got up slowly, started to meditate, and he could finally look at someone without having to see their future. Lena, who was looking at me, curiously asked, "Your connection to the sacred world is really strong. Why is that?" I smiled and said, "That is something you will find out in the future, Lena, and thank you for everything." Lena blushed and went a finer father. I simply learned I gained many new abilities, whether manipulation, I held dominion over the night, and all its creatures that I could call upon, bats, wolves, etc., to do their will, and can transform into a swarm of bats at will. My clothing and anything I hold, like swords, guns, etc., also dematerializes into bats with them. I can also change parts of their bodies into bats to grab people, become intangible to attacks, and other things that I gained full control over pure mana or supernatural energy, which was really powerful. Vidar soon came to the crypt with Lena as he laughed and said, "Only you, my old friend, are capable of such feat to be able to have such a strong connection to the scared world." I just grinned, and we started talking to Vidar mostly about Marcus and Amelia's coven, then went to find Marcus. I was waiting for Marcus in his study, reading one of the books I had brought. As Marcus entered the room, he smiled at me. "Grandfather, I see you are back. Is it time to save my brother?" I nodded. "Yes, it is. Victor thinks we don't know about William's prison since he killed the builder of the prison. But we have already found the prison, and we have the key. Also, I have found a way to bring him to normal, but he will still have his Lycan form." Marcus smiled and replied, "So it won't be much time when William is free." I closed the book I was reading and said, "Yes, he will be free soon, but I must say your father is trying to create an organization to make sure that the supernatural world is not known to humans." Marcus was thoughtful. "Yes, it is a good idea. Humans are pretty creative. Sooner or later, they will find ways to kill us, even though I believe if we really put effort, we can easily defeat them." I nodded at that, since I was thinking of making my vampires and werewolves researchers and inventors, since that will really help our cause. I asked curiously, "So what is Victor up to?" Marcus groaned. "He is getting paranoid and wants to create more vampires. Amelia and I are thinking about taking a similar option as the Nordic Coven. Also, he has brought a girl called Celine who looks very similar to Sonia and wants to turn her into a vampire." I muttered. This is his way of correcting the mistake of what happened to Sonia. I changed the subject, "But can you trust Amelia?" Marcus signed. "If it was before, I would have said no, but she has a companion named Thomas who is from the Western Coven, and she does not want to lose him." I just nodded, thought, I will have to come up with a blood contract, so she won't betray us, since I really like their son, David. I soon said goodbye to Marcus. As I went to William's prison, getting in was easy. I opened all the doors, then soon saw his prison. I sighed. Being locked up in this cell for centuries is a total nightmare. I opened the cell as William slowly started to move and come out. My eyes changed to red, and canines became more profound as I let out a growl, which was enough to make William calm down. I injected the cure, which I made from Lucian's blood, and some magic. Soon William let out a howl as he started to transform back to his human form, then fell on the ground, exhausted. I slowly picked him up. "William, can you hear me?" William, who was still confused, and looked at me, "I've heard that voice before, Grandpa." I groaned. "Both you and your brother are the same. No, let's get you home." I teleported him to Alexander's castle as I shouted, "Alexander, come here right now, or I will beat you to death." Alexander, who quickly made it toward me, saw William. "Is that William? And he is back to normal?" I smiled. "Yes, I was able to turn him back to normal. He is really weak now and will need to be looked after. Also, he will remember his time as a werewolf, so support him the best you can." Alexander, in full seriousness, "I fail my sons once, not again. And are you going to tell Marcus of this?" I nodded. "I will tell him soon." I spoke with Alexander for a while, then went to home. I just fell in my bed as I heard a knock. "Come in, it is open." It was Cecilia, who kept her poker face and asked, "Have you found anything about my sister?" I nodded. "Yes, she has been taken in by Victor himself and turned into a vampire." Cecilia, who heard, asked, "What is he doing to her?" I replied, "You know how Victor sentenced Lady Sonia, right? How she fell in love with Lord Lucian Lycan." Cecilia nodded as I continued. "Your sister looks very similar to Sonia." Added to that, he now has a chance to correct what Sonia did by making Celine hate all the Lycans. Cecilia was thoughtful as she asked, So Victor is using my sister to remove his own guilt. But this guilt is not about having Sonia killed, but the fact she grew up and had fallen in love with a Lycan. I just nodded since it is true. I went to see Sonia, who was 8 months pregnant, who was looking out the window as I asked, worried about Lucian. Sonia replied, "Yes, I am afraid he would die in this war. I know you will be there, but this fear is not going away." I nodded and said, "We will think of something, don't worry." I teleported to Lucian soon, who was worried. I spoke. "You and Sonia are really worried about your child and his future." Lucian nodded and sadly smiled. "It is just thinking about how my son is raised in the middle of a war, and I may not even be there for his birth. I was thinking, well, I can use Craven the Bastard will do anything to save his skin, so making him believe he killed Lucian in an ambush will work for Lucian to be with his family at least until his son comes of age, and I can kill Craven as kind of revenge to make it look real." I muttered as went out, so many decisions to make. Marcus was soon notified about William being free, and William is slowly getting back to his old self, but he blames himself a lot for his time as a mindless werewolf. I soon decided to check on William, who was drawing to take his mind to things. I asked, "So still blaming yourself for things you didn't have any control over?" William, who looked at me, sighed. "Grandfather, it is just I remember almost every person I killed the fear on their face as I devoured or killed them. I am having nightmares about it." I nodded, since it is not possible for him to just forget about it. I asked William, "So what are you going to do in the future?" William looked thoughtful. "I will help Father in keeping the supernatural world secret from the humans." I smiled. "That is a good idea." I talked with him for a while, then went to the Lycan castle as I soon left. I waited for Lucian to return, who came with prisoners who were Soren and some of his lackeys. I smirked. "What hap you are not one to take prisoners?" Lucian smiled and replied, "Well, these people were scouting us, but was soon caught by our Lycans." I nodded and compelled Soren to tell what they planned. I mentally thought, so they were going to ambush a weakened Lucian who was returning from battle. I made Soren and his lackeys return and made sure they would go with the plan. I was with Lucian, Reyes, Sabas, and Zristo, so the war is about to start soon since Victor has gathered enough vampires for it. And from what our spy has told us how they are going with it, they are sending 3 groups, each having 3,000 vampires. I really didn't know what Victor was thinking. Is he banking on the fact that I will not be able to reach these places quickly? I signed and Lucian explained, "I will take the army in the north. Fenris will take the one in the east, and Reyes, Sabas, and Zristo take the army in the west." I gestured for Lucian to come with me as I entered the study. I said, "Will you have your chance to see your son grow up?" Lucian asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" I replied, "Well, the scouts who captured their boss, Craven, is a power-hungry bastard. He's going to ambush you when you return from battle. Just capture him and make deal with him. This way you can easily see your son grow up." Not even able to see your son grow up is kind of bad in my mind, at least, since he didn't have the luxury of this in the movie. Well, everything went as normal. Cecilia was getting stronger. Everyone nodded at that. Soon Sonia gave birth to a baby boy. I was able to teleport Lucian to see him. It was really beautiful to see it. I saw Celine look at me, who turned away the moment she saw I noticed her. I asked Lucian, "So have you thought about a name?" Sonia smiled and said, "Romulus, I read that name in one of your books, brother." I smiled. "So named after the legendary founder and first king of Rome who was said to raised by a she-wolf." Lucian, who heard this, replied, "I like it." Small third POV. The war soon broke out. The vampire army was marching towards the open area. As all of them, instead of seeing an army, they just saw one person sitting on a boulder in the middle, and the moonlight revealed his face. Fenris, the immortal Reaper, or Red King. POV ended. Fenris POV. I smiled as I saw the whole army take a step back. Seeing me, I heard the commander shout, but his voice wavering, "It's the Reaper himself. Retreat now. Everyone retreat." I didn't take any Lycans with me, since I really wanted to use my werewolf form against this army. I was waiting for them to show up. As I saw them, my face had a bloodthirsty grin, with my canines being profound. I realized my bloodlust. The funny thing is their superiors already warned them about me and told retreat immediately if they saw me. I smirked as I saw them re-tearing, scattering. That I muttered, "Like the stars shining in the daytime. The light of Lycos reach even the heavens." I started to transform into my werewolf form with bones realign into a more lupin skeleton as their muscles bulge and spasm, while the human skin is shed, revealing the werewolf fur underneath, which was enough to scare the hell out of them. I mentally thought, you are not getting away. I already put a field spell, making it impossible for them to escape. I ran right towards them after that. Everything from then on was a bloodbath. I started tear vampires' heads off or tearing them into pieces with my claws. Some could not even resist my werewolf venom. Those who tried to slash with their silver swords found out immediately they didn't even cut because of the chitin layer, and those that tried to run away were easily killed by me. I slowly by bone started to reshape into a human skeleton, with the muscles repeatedly bulging and shrinking until they reach a human size. Also, my whole body was drenched in blood as I walked towards the last 6 vampires in the army, who practically shit their pants in fear. I congratulated them. You guys are lucky ones to be given a chance to live. Do tell everyone what happened here. My face turned expressionless. Tell Victor his life was just a gift for me. I can take it when I want. I got a nod from them as they ran for their lives. I teleported to see how others were doing. There were Lycan casualties, but we were able to use the forest to our advantage and defeat the army. Also, Victor once again ran after seeing his army was being killed off. That I also can guess in the movie Amelia and Marcus must have joined, making the army almost double, leading to the Lycans' defeat. Marcus and Amelia, although they can't fully remove themselves from the Vampire Council, decided to stay out of the Vampire-Lycan War. That's when Lucian showed up with a smile and said, just like you said, that bastard Craven, seeing his chance in becoming an elder, instantly agreed to the deal. Well, everything went like the movie. Victor easily believed the fake story, since instead of just the skin, we provided him with a fake arm of Lucian with the branding. Vampire Council POV. Victor, who was happy with Lucian's death, said, I think Craven here needs to be rewarded for taking down that beast. I am appointing him as member of the council. Marcus and Amelia were looking at each other as Marcus spoke. Victor, did you forget you do not have the power to appoint him without our vote? Victor sneered at Marcus. What seems to be the problem of appointing Craven the reagent of the coven? After all, he has done a great service. Amelia said, pointing at Craven. Well, all you can do is appoint Craven as council member if you want, but you forget Fenris would just take it laying down. After all, Craven did just kill his brother. Victor scoffed and replied, forget about that. Demon Craven here will be protected inside our castle walls. Marcus simply shook his head and said, don't say I didn't warn you, Victor. Victor gave a grand party in Craven's honor. Also, Craven went around bragging about how he took down Lucian alone. Well, like Amelia and Marcus said, the next day, they found Craven was crucified in their own castle courtyard with a board hanging on his neck. Victor, Amelia, and Marcus saw the crucified Craven. Neither Amelia nor Marcus was that shocked, since they expected this, and Marcus read the board with enough sound that everyone could hear it. Remember, this fool is only alive because I want him to live in fear that I can kill him at any place and any time. Hearing this, everyone present was trembling in fear at the fact that a person easily entered their fortress and crucified one of their new hero without being seen or heard, and also at the fact that Craven was only alive because the demon wolf Fenris wanted him to live. Celine, who saw and heard everything, asked her trainer Nicholas, who is this Fenris? I have heard his name many times, but no one seems to tell me who he is. Nicholas hesitated, then spoke. Fenris is Lucian's older brother. He is not Lycan, nor is he anything like the werewolves that came from William Corvinus. He is much stronger, and everyone here fears him because he massacred more than 2,500 death dealers and guards when Castle Corvinus was taken over that to single-handedly, without even turning into his werewolf form, and this is by no means exaggeration. So, if you see Fenris, just run. Celine. 1890. Time passed quickly after Craven was crucified. No vampire was ever going to set foot in any territory claimed by Fenris. Also, Craven only became a council member, and Coleman became the reagent, although Craven did become extremely paranoid, always having death dealer bodyguards with him all the time. Also, Celine started to go on death dealer missions, which her main aim was to hunt Lycans, but now was only able to get rogue ones that defected, since some wanted to continue the war. I saw Cecilia enter the office as I asked. So what happened? I'm guessing you managed to keep Celine safe. Cecilia smiled, replied, Yeah, the girl is a real trouble magnet. And where is David? I scratched my head, said, He is out playing with Rome. Cecilia had a small smile as she said, Don't worry, you're doing great as a single parent. Yeah, David is my son. I had a one-night stand with Amelia, which led to her getting pregnant, and having David in the Nordic Coven. Never would have imagined cuckolding Thomas, but whatever, who cares? Flashback. I was rubbing my temple as I looked at both Marcus and Amelia, as I said, So let me get this straight, Amelia is pregnant, and I am the father of the child. Marcus groaned. Grandfather, I this tough, but if Victor hears about this, he will kill the child and Amelia without a second, and thought also all our work with keeping treaty will be wasted. I looked at Amelia as I asked, So you want me to keep the child, but what will I say when he asks about his mother? Amelia bit her lip and replied, Tell him she is dead. I raised an eyebrow as I read her thoughts. This woman was going to start a relationship with the vampire Thomas before this happened. I replied coldly, So be it, he's the possible heir of Michelson's family. Also, don't ever think of using him, just like you said his mother is dead, okay? Amelia flinched, but nodded as she got up, went to her room, given to her by Vidar. Marcus sighed. Grandfather, did you have to be so cold? I gritted my teeth and said, That woman didn't even think once for the fact that this child carries her blood. She just cares about saving the relationship with that other vampire Thomas, and sees the child as something that will get in between them. Can't blame her. But if David ever asks for his mother, what should I say? Your mother wanted to save a relationship, so she left you. Marcus raised an eyebrow at that and muttered, Then I would have behaved the same way. Flashback ended. David Michelson was born in the Nordic Coven. The moment I saw him, I knew he was very David that should have been born to Thomas and Amelia. But Amelia immediately returned to the Eastern Coven. I didn't think much about her. Sonia and Cecilia helped me raise him. He was a little brother to Romulus. It did take that long for our faction, the Lycans, to be powerhouses. The stupid, power-hungry ones who tried to usurp us were sometimes killed or banished. I was pitching the bridge of my nose in frustration as I thought, paperwork must be really my worst enemy. Somewhere in other universes, 5 Hokages and 4 Devil Kings suddenly had a strange thought. Someone now understands how evil paperwork is. Suddenly, I was visited by Marcus, who seemed concerned as I questioned, What happened now? Marcus sighed. It seems there are reports of 3 Lycan brothers who, as werewolves terrorize the area, but in human form, are posing as lords and have claimed a mansion as their own. They call themselves Lords of Crescent Wills. I nodded and replied, We got info on them. We were going to send some of our people to killing them. Marcus was glad to hear that, but once again turned serious and replied, But there is a problem. Victor has sent Celine to investigate the place alone, and I thought this will be the best time to get Celine to our side by telling her the truth. I was thinking as I asked, So Victor is not having someone tail Celine now, like before, is he? Marcus nodded and said, Yes, he now thinks he was able to completely manipulate her into his side by making her hate the Lycans. I was thinking making Cecilia go alone is foolish. I doubt Celine will just believe her like that. After all, we never able to get her alone without either Victor or Craven being around her. Also, I doubt she would believe me or Cecilia. If we sneaked in her room, she would 100% try to kill her. I looked at Marcus and said, I will personally go along with Cecilia. We may be able to get her to see reason. Marcus nodded, soon went away as I soon walked to find Lucian and David, who I found sparing. I watched as Lucian, because of his experience and boost in strength granted by magic and Corvinus strain, was clearly having an upper hand against David. Heard Lucian smirk and say, Come on, nephew, you can do it. David, who was irritated at not being able to beat Lucian, replied, I will defeat you for sure. David used telekinesis to throw Lucian to the wall, which took Lucian by surprise, but he was able to quickly recover from it as Lucian yelled, David, this is a hand-to-hand combat. You are not allowed to use your powers. I clapped and entered the grounds as I looked at David and said, David, that was a nice use of telekinesis. David smiled hearing that, but that turned into a frown when he heard the next part. But like Lucian said, this is a hand-to-hand combat, and you are not allowed to use your powers because we don't want to make you dependent on them all the time. David nodded, as he understood his father wanted to make sure he is strong enough even without his powers. David, like me, was a tribrid with Corvinus strain, being part warlock. He has been taught by me how to use magic. When he became 17, I told him about his mother Amelia. He was hurt at first, but slowly got over it now. He didn't care about who she was, and didn't even want to meet her for him. She was just someone who gave birth to him, nothing more, nothing less. Flashback. David, who was silent after I told him about his mother, said, "So she just left to save her relationship, not thinking about me or visiting me." David was in deep thought. I always imagined what my mother looked like now, hearing she is alive, and ran away not even thinking about me. I was easily able to hear all of David's projected thoughts. "It slightly hurt to see your son, and since Amelia running away and not even coming to see David only made matter worse," as I replied. "I know it is hard for you." David broke out of his thoughts and replied, "I won't lie, it hurts to know your mother is alive and didn't even come to see you once." I sighed and said, "I understand if you want to meet her." David shook his head and said, "No, before this I would have gone and met her now. She is just some stranger to me, and I have two great mother figures in your life, Aunt Cecilia and Aunt Sonia. Also, I have a great father." I smiled hearing that as I patted him in the shoulder and said, "That's my son." I knew internally he was hurt about his mother abandoning him, but was keeping a strong face. But people say time heals. Let's hope it does. I sipping a glass of blood and waiting for Amelia to come and discuss our werewolf problem in pairs. As I thought about the night, I overheard grandfather and David talking about Amelia. "You have lost a chance to have a great family, Amelia, and if grandfather finds a mate in the future, then you'll be truly forgotten." Also, from what my father and Lucian told me, grandfather had saved his virginity for his future wife, has not had any kind of relationship. All such a pity it was wasted on Amelia. While Fenris, who was in Paris with Cecilia, felt like beating the pulp out of certain Corvinus brats and Lucian. Amelia really is now really pitiful. Her relationship with Thomas is not really that great as she thought, while David is having a better life and is slowly forgetting about her. It was really pitiful. It didn't take long. Amelia soon entered the room, giving Marcus a nod of acknowledgement, while Marcus just raised his goblet and said, "Amelia, I contacted with Lord Fenris on so-called Lycan Lords of Crescent Wolves. He gave me info on them also. They are Rouge werewolves." Marcus noticed a change in her emotion in Amelia when she heard the name Fenris, but he knew even if she went to Fenris, now things won't change. Amelia, who was stoic, asked, "So what do we have on these Lycans?" Marcus sipped blood from his glass, said, "Well, these Lycans are brothers. Their eldest is Darius Verghese. He was the middle of three Lycan brothers, and the youngest is Crandrel. Their father, Maleficus, was one of the people who tried to rebel against Fenris when they wanted to end the war, but he failed and was soon exiled." Amelia was listening to all this question. "So what of this Maleficus?" Marcus replied, "Well, he died at the hands of one of our death dealers." Amelia sighed. "So Celine will easily be able to take care of these three brothers." I didn't say anything else since the information about Cecilia was strictly confidential. Fenris POV. I was now in Paris with Cecilia with me. She is worried about whether or not her sister will accept her or not. After hearing the truth, I sighed and thought Cecilia has spent over 400 not being able to get her sister out of Victor's grasp, as the paranoid idiot really has been making sure Celine didn't take the path of Sonia. We soon saw Celine, who was now looking at a message delivered to her from Craven, and soon jumping from building to building while I muttered, "She is driven by revenge. I must say Victor really has a great job, is making her believe Lycans killed her family." While Cecilia, who heard this, replied, "I will rip Victor to pieces after I get my sister out of his grasp." I just gave a nod and said, "Okay, Cecilia, I will first contact Celine. We don't know how she will react if she sees you out of the blue." Cecilia nodded, and we both soon started to follow Celine, who was jumping from one building to another, while following the Darius, the oldest of the Lycan brothers, who were posing as Lords of Crescent Wills, and seeing Celine jump into an alley, which made me suspicious, since it would be made her lose Darius, as I quickly telepathically told to just watch from a distance until I tell her to come. The moment I jumped into the alley, only to see Celine was wielding dual pistols at me, and started firing. The bullets struck my body and only was able to pierce my skin. Soon her bullets ran out. I sighed. That stung a bit. I started forcing all the bullets that entered the body outside. Watching this, Celine didn't want Fenris to fully recover, as started to move into close combat, as I started to easily block her each kick and punch, I could only think her fighting style and stance are all the same as Sonya. Victor is trying to create a copy of Sonya. Celine couldn't even get him to be serious, as she knew this was not any ordinary Lycan. Also, she saw the Lycan pitted her, which angered her, as well as confused her. So she questioned, "Who are you?" I smiled and dusted myself while saying, "Oh, where are my manners? My name is Fenris Michael's son." Celine, who heard their name, raised her eyebrows and thought, "This is not someone I could fight alone." Celine has obviously heard of Fenris's name, was infamous among the vampire circle. Even Victor feared him, which was saying something. Celine, who kept a stoic face, but there was slight fear in her heart, asked, "What do you want, Lycan?" I smiled and asked, "I'm not here to kill you. I just want you to talk to someone." Celine knew the Fenris could easily kill her whenever he wanted. Also, she was not sure she could kill him, as even silver bullets didn't seem even faze him, so she decided to hear him out. Celine narrowed her eyes and asked who. I just gestured my hand, giving the signal, as Cecilia came out of the shadows with a smile and said, "Hello, sister." Celine, who snapped out of her stunned state, started muttering in denial, No, this is not real." Cecilia, who was hurt seeing her little sister in such a state, said, "It is really me, Celine." Celine's stoic mask broke while she yelled, "No, it is not true, Cecilia. Is dead, you Lycans are just trying to trick me." Celine raced straight towards Cecilia, tries to kick her only for her to block it. Celine continues to fight with Cecilia, landing lightning-fast kicks and some punches, but most of them are blocked or shrugged off. Cecilia, seeing her sister is in complete denial, easily counters the punch, sending Celine groaning on the floor, but she quickly recovered. Celine tried to spin kick only for Cecilia to easily dodge it. Celine realizes nothing is working in irritation, tries to throw a few shurikens only for Cecilia to dodge them, and quickly sped to Celine and flips her head over heels as she smashed onto the dumpster. While wincing in pain, I already knew who was going to win, so I bluntly questioned, "What do we gain by tricking you, Celine? You may be favored by Victor, but you're not an elder, nor are you on the council. So what do we gain by lying to you?" Celine, who was still in pain when she heard this, started to calm down, and the more she thought about this, the more she could see that Fenris here didn't gain anything from doing this. Just like he said, she may be a skilled death dealer, but she is not in the council, nor was she an elder, and sure, Victor favored her, but there was a limit to how much she was favored by him. Cecilia calmly said, "Celine, think about it. Have you seen my dead body after the so-called Lycan attack?" Celine, thinking back, replied, "No, Victor said your body was mangled beyond recognition." Celine knew what Cecilia here told was true. She didn't see her dead body. She just took Victor's word for it. Also, she didn't want to see the last image for her sister to be like that. Cecilia continued, "Celine, our parents were not killed by Lycans, but were killed by Victor and Craven." Celine, who heard this, was broken and questioned, "Why kill our parents? What did they ever do to him?" Cecilia sighed and replied, "Our father was master stonemason. He was in charge of building a fort for Victor. Remember the one we used to play in when we were young, when we went with father to see it?" Celine had slight flashes of memories, while Cecilia continued, "The location of that place was something Victor didn't want to fall in the hands of Lycans, so he killed our parents and even me, if not for Lord Fenris saving me." Cecilia, seeing Celine is still having a hard time believing all this, so she walked towards Celine and bit her wrist while making Celine drink her blood, while saying, "Drink, you will see the truth." Just like Cecilia said, Celine started to see Cecilia's memories, like Craven killing, almost killing her, also saw Victor killing both their parents. Celine knew about blood memories are a trait possessed by both vampires and Lycans, which allows them to transmit their memories through their blood to others. It was not something you can fake. Not even Fenris could create fake blood memories. Best he could do was hide them. Celine, in confusion, questioned, "So why didn't he kill me?" Cecilia took a breath and replied, "Because you reminded him of his daughter Sonya. He is trying to make you a perfect copy of her. Unlike the original Sonya, who fell in love with Lucian, he was able to make you completely hate Lycans." Celine raised an eyebrow. She had heard about Sonya and her death at the hands of Lucian, but now she knew that was also a lie, as she asked, "So he lied so he could mold me into a Lycan-hating version of Sonya?" Cecilia just gave a nod while I spoke. "I know you have a hard time believing this, but all of this is true. Originally, Celine would have denied everything even if she had seen her sister. She would just consider this all a ploy by the Lycans. But the seeing the blood memories cannot be faked by any means. Celine slowly hugged her sister while crying. This was the first time Celine cried after death of her parents. I knew we didn't have a lot of time since Celine had a mission to kill the Lycan brother, so I immediately said, "Cecilia, we have to move since Celine has a mission to complete." Cecilia, who slowly let go of Celine, said, "Don't worry, we will help you with the Lycan problem." Celine gave a nod, while started to reload her gun. A small part of her still said Victor would not have killed her parent. So she started to go through her previous memories and saw that her father had once mentioned about the Lycan attack stopping after Lord Fenris and Lucian took over Castle Corvinus, and Victor was an elder. He didn't take part in patrols, so him to show up when her family was attacked by so-called Lycans to be too much of coincidence for a high-ranking vampire like him appear. Celine grimaced while going through Cecilia's blood memories, her sister almost getting killed by Craven. The things her sister had to go through as she thought. My grief and rage blinded me. There are too many holes in Victor's story about the Lycan attack. We soon made our way to their castle. Scene questioned, "So, these brothers, do you have any info on how many Lycans are under them?" I thought for a while and replied, "Well, the youngest brother, Crandrel, has a harem of women who are all Lycans. They are all brainwashed to follow his every order other than that. They have no other defenses. Also, the brothers are too arrogant, because I didn't do anything to them till now." Celine, who returned to her expressionless self, gave a nod as I gave her two 9mm Heckler & Koch USP match loaded with silver nitrate bullets. She looked at the gun and looked at me for an answer as I replied, "That is different from normal vampires' standard silver-plated bullets used to kill Lycans. This, when shot, a silver solution is excreted from the round directly into the bloodstream of the Lycan victim, clogging it with poison. But remember to keep it out of Craven and Victor's reach, since both of them will mass-produce this to go war with Lycan." Celine looked at the gun with interest. While she will not let Victor or Craven get a hand, since her hatred for both of them has reached a new level, also, she is really thankful that Fenris helped her sister. We soon reached the castle as I could easily sense the Lycans inside the castle getting ready to fight us. I threw a flash grenade in as Celine and Cecilia broke into the mansion through the window and started firing at the Lycans, who were blinded. Both were like reapers, since each target receives 2 well-placed bullets to ensuring incapacitation. Both never slowing, never missing, while Celine, once emptied the magazine, quickly reloads it with Cecilia covering her, continues the massacre. Cecilia wanted to keep her sword skills polished as she cuts down one Lycan after another, easily dodging Lycans attacking her while also kicking them when they are too close. She blade axe slices through one of Lycans in an eye blink. Cecilia is up again, advancing. He cuts down another Lycan, pushes forward. Cecilia, who saw, sweeps her sword around in a wide arc, cutting straight through the third Lycan's midsection. The upper half of Lycan's body topples away. Cecilia saw 4 Lycans who had not transformed started readying their rifles as she yelled, "Celine, take cover." As both Cecilia and Celine quickly dodged and rolled behind a pillar, taking cover from the firing, as I was watching the fight with interest, as I muttered, "Cecilia has really come a long way. If you used her full speed, she would have easily killed all of the Lycans." Both Celine and Cecilia make good partners. Cecilia quickly took out her gun and waited for them to run out of ammo. The moment arrived soon as Cecilia dove and shot the shooter straight in the head, killing them immediately. I was enjoying their fight as 4 Lycans rushed towards me as I dodged the incoming Lycans and punched through Lycan's chest and ripped out his heart, killing them instantly, while quickly going to next Lycan and using full strength to slice through Lycan's neck, decapitating him. The other 2 Lycans started to fear me and ran away while I started wiping my hands of all the blood. Well, the fight ended as I looked at Cecilia and Celine and said, "The brothers, and escaping, we must move now." Knowing time is running out, I followed the brothers' scent into an underground passageway. As we made our way through it, we were ambushed by 3 fully transformed Lycans. Cecilia quickly dodged the attack from Vrages, while she threw her sword towards Celine, who jumped over the older brother and stabbed the silver sword right trough as should, while the youngest brother Crandrel pounced at me as I simply grabbed him by the throat and threw him towards his brother. Vrages, both knowing they are. Defeated, started to run as Cecilia threw her glaive, which cut the arm of Vrages, who howled in pain. Celine drew the 2.9mm Heckler and Koch USP match loaded with silver nitrate bullets and started shooting them only for Darius to cover his brothers, knowing for his brother to survive, he must sacrifice himself. Seeing chance to escape, both brothers fled. The moment Darius was shot by silver nitrate bullets, the silver solution is excreted from the round, directly entered into the bloodstream, poisoning him. He turned back to his human form, while gasping said, "My brother will avenge me." I smiled, showed him my hybrid eyes, and replied, "I must say you are a really good brother. But sorry to say, both your brothers will soon join you." Darius, who saw this, said, "Lord Fenris." Soon he succumbed to poisoning caused by the silver. I was watching the two sisters catch up. I felt very bad about breaking up this moment, as I said, "Well, Cecilia, you remember we cannot take Celine with us." Cecilia was sad, as she knew taking Celine now would not be a good thing, as Celine questioned, "Why can't I come with both of you?" I sighed and replied, "Well, it is complicated. We can't take you, at least not yet." Celine gritted her teeth and asked, "So you're saying I should go back to my parents' murder?" I winced at the venom in her tone while calmly replied, "I know it is hard, but just hear me out. Victor is really unhinged. He will use any means to start a war with Lycans, a war that will attract the attention of the humans. I don't really need more headaches." Celine, who heard this, gave a nod and questioned, "So what do you want to do with Victor?" I smiled and replied, "Killing him with sword and gun is too quick. I have something planned that will make him suffer a lot before he dies." Celine gave a nod, hearing that, while I gave her a bracelet and said, "This bracelet will let you meet your sister whenever you want. Just say my Callison Manor. Then it will teleport you to Cecilia's home, and to return to your room, just say Victor's mansion. But make sure to use this when you are in your private quarters." Celine looked at the bracelet, then looked at me as if I was crazy, while Cecilia, who saw this, laughed and said, "It is true, Celine, and if you think this is crazy, then you have seen nothing yet." Celine was good with putting on an emotionless mask, so we decided to trust her sister while we both returned to our respective covens, but it didn't take long since Celine showed up in our manor next day, yelling in rage, that bastard acting as if he is sad about my parent, and saying how I was avenging them by killing the Lycans. Cecilia calmed her down, telling, "Let him act like saint. We will have our revenge when the time comes. Until then, Lord Marcus is taking away all his influence." Celine was surprised as she questioned, "Lord Marcus is on this?" Cecilia shrugged and replied, "Yes, you have heard the story of the Corvinus brothers, one bitten by a bat, another by a wolf." Celine gave a nod while Cecilia continued, "Well, Marcus was the one who was bitten by the bat, while Willem, his twin brother, was bitten by a rabid wolf, was unable to human form. Also, he was driven by pure primal instinct, and William's rage could not be controlled as he roamed the countryside, killing everything in sight. His lycanthropy virus spread across the land, turning hundreds of humans into savages, werewolves, until he was captured and imprisoned in fortress away from Lord Marcus's reach." Celine put the info together and said, "The fortress was built by our father." Cecilia nodded and grimaced. "Yes, the prison was built by our father, and when Lord Fenris and Lord Lucian captured the castle Corvinus, Lord Lucian got his hands on the key to William's prison, fearing that Lucian will set Willem free. Victor killed our parents to tie up the loose ends." Both sisters were tearing up a bit as Celine asked, "So what is Fenris? From what I have heard, he is mutated Lycan, who is stronger, faster, and immune to silver. Also, he could not create Lycans of his own." Cecilia laughed hearing that, and she replied, "Well, that is a lie. Lord Fenris is the one who made me a vampire." Celine, who stunned, and she questioned, "How?" Cecilia smiled, replied, "Lord Fenris is tribrid vampire / werewolf / warlock. He is older than Alexander Corvinus himself. The vampires and werewolves who are sired from him are faster and stronger than their Corvinus counterparts." Celine knew Fenris was different, but this just blew her mind as she asked, "But why haven't we seen any of these vampires or werewolves?" Cecilia replied, "Well, both werewolves and vampires sired by Lord Fenris has been working along with Willem and Alexander Corvinus in making sure no one finds about the supernatural world. We have much more influence than Victor or Amelia can ever dream of." Cecilia knew what she told was true, as Fenris always sent a group of vampires to compel people holding a powerful position in each country's governments. We made sure to keep them loyal. They are like familiars from Blade. We also had vampires or werewolves started advancing in every field. Fenris also owned many companies. Each was under a different vampire or werewolf, so the cash was never a problem. Celine was following Cecilia when she saw Fenris sparring against an adult and teenage boy in the courtyard. As she questioned, "Who are those people fighting against Fenris?" Cecilia smiled and replied, "The blonde-headed boy is David. He is Lord Fenris' son." Celine looked at Cecilia with slight shock as she questioned, "Who is the mother?" Cecilia answered with slight anger, "Amelia." This shocked Celine even further as she asked, "What Lady Amelia?" Cecilia gave a nod and replied, "Don't think much about it. That bitch lost the right to call him mother the moment she decided to abandon him." Celine didn't question as further as Cecilia continued, "The black-haired adult is Romulus, son of Lucian and Sonia." This caused Celine's stoic mask to crack as she yelled, "What?" Cecilia simply pointed towards the edge of the building where Lucian and Sonia were standing and watching the spar. Cecilia said, "I will explain." Cecilia then explained to Celine how Fenris had faked both Sonia and Lucian's death. All this new info blew Celine's mind. One thing is for sure, Celine's respect for Fenris increased by a lot. Celine started to show more often at the Achilles Manor, although it was mostly to talk with her and catch up on the time they lost. But Cecilia came to me asking for me to turn Celine into our kind of vampires. Flashback. I was looking at Cecilia as I questioned, "Are you sure your sister wants to turn into one of our kind? You know we are faster, stronger than Corvinus vampires, so she will have to control her strength and speed before she goes back to Victor." Cecilia, who heard this new turning Celine, meant she would have to learn to control her strength and speed fast very quickly, since time was not something they had in abundance. But Celine quickly cut in, "I know it takes time to learn how to control your kind's abilities. That I was given a job to hunt the other two Lycan brothers, so it will give me an excuse to be outside Orgadras." I gave a nod and replied that would work. "Also, has Cecilia told you about our kind's weaknesses and strengths?" Celine gave a nod and said, "Yes, she explained how your vampires were different." I was thoughtful. Cecilia is an original vampire with Corvinus strain. Although she's the only one, she, like the others, she is still bound to my sire line. Flashback ended. Well, thing went normal as I turned Celine into original Corvinus strain vampire. I don't know if it is the plot armor or she's naturally a fast learner, but she grasped our abilities quickly. She found compelling to be very useful, as humans sometimes can be quite a pain in the ass to deal with. I was sparing with her. I assumed my fighting stance as Celine did something and was cautiously circling until Celine gives a short cry and launches a series of furious attacks. All of them were high speed, punches and kicks striking from every angle as Celine presses his attack, but each and every blow is blocked with effortless speed by Fenris. Fenris was now on the offensive as she attacks him with his punches and kicks taking her apart. For every blow Celine blocks, 5 more hit their marks until she falls on the ground panting. On her hands and knees, blood spits from her mouth. I clapped my hands and said, "Bravo, you really took my lessons like fish in water." Celine scoffed, "But I still can't land a punch on you." I smiled and replied, "That is because I have more experience than you. Also, who knows, you will soon be able to make me fight seriously." Celine slowly got up as she said, "Craven has been bugging me for a while about the other Lycan brothers. If I don't present him with at least one of their heads, he will be suspicious." I gave a nod while giving a bit of thought. I answered, "The Lycan brothers are slippery. They will lay low for a while, since they know the death dealers have taken note of them. But I know a way to shut Craven up. The brothers have a benefactor, their father's friend Matthias. He will probably supply them with some weapons and mode of transportation." Celine got the drift as she said, "You mean to capture this Matthias and bring him alive before the council, so Craven will leave me alone?" I gave a nod and replied, "Yes, this will make sure Craven can't say anything against you, and I will make sure Coleman will support you since he is the reagent of Orgadras." Celine knew with Coleman's support, she won't have to worry about Craven sending his men tailing her. Celine simply said, "Thank you for everything you have done." I simply replied, Don't worry, both you and your sister need some form of happiness in your life. Celine gave a nod while I spoke. You can go to your sister, tell her about the new assignment. I am sure she will take you towards our armory. While Fenris didn't notice, Celine had a small smile on her face as she quickly sped away to find her sister. I was now thinking about Matthias. I need to bring David with me in this mission. I need to see how much he progressed with his abilities. I let a servant go and called David and Romulus to my office. When both of them soon entered the room, I saw Lucian and Sonia were with them as I asked Lucian and Sonia what happened. Lucian smiled and replied, "Nothing. Sonia wanted to know why you summoned both David and Romulus." I simply searched through the files on my desk and found a file with details of Matthias as I put in front of them. Lucian saw I was serious as he took the file and read it. Seeing the photo of Matthias, he sighed and asked, "Matthias, what has he done now?" I replied, "No, he has not done anything yet, but I believe the Lycan brothers Vragus and Crandrel will go and meet him for help. I was thinking about taking both Romulus and David with me in the assignment to capture him, as I wanted to see how much both of them have grown." Lucian understood what Fenris was talking about as he looked at Romulus, who was thoughtful, and he said, "I will skip this as I am going on a mission with Uncle Ray's." I gave a nod, understanding he had another mission, while I turned to David, who shrugged and replied, "I have nothing to do, so I will come with you, Dad." I smiled, hearing and that since this was a good time to decide whether or not I should take David to the Nordic Coven to do the Verdor sacred ritual. If he's not ready for it, then I will just postpone it till he is ready. We were soon discussing hitting Matthay base. He was one of those idiots who wanted to continue the war. He went with the Verghese, Candril, and Darius' father Maleficus, and tried to rebel, but was outed. After understanding the fact, without Fenris's support, they are sitting ducks as Maleficus was killed by death dealers, and before long leaving Matthay with 3 of his children. Fenris sighed and said, "We will approach their base, soon be ready." Both David and Celine gave nod as they prepared their weapons. David knew his father was testing him, and so he didn't want to let him down. While we soon reached the place as Fenris chanted, "Phasmatos veris nos ex malum. Terra mora vantis quo incandis pervasa quo eram signos," as boundary spell was cast around the mansion, making it impossible for Matthias to get out without Fenris taking it down. The mansion pretty much was guarded by Lycans, as the one of them tried to stop the entry, only to get his heart ripped by Fenris, as these Rouge Lycans were shocked, making it easier for Celine and David, who started to them out quickly. Fenris was taking out one Lycan after another, just through either decapitation or heart extraction, as we all made our way to the mansion. While inside the mansion, Matthias didn't know his so-called nephews had brought death to his doorsteps, as he was ordering, "Go, what is with all of you? There is only 3 people. Should I do things myself?" As more Lycans came out of the mansion, and some even transformed as David took with his sword, using his speed to his advantage, he was slicing one Lycan after another. While Celine was dodging and shooting, Lycans who had transformed these bullets were all silver nitrate bullets, making it impossible for the ones who were shot to survive. The moment the silver entered their bloodstream, they started to transform back to their human form and were on the ground groaning in pain. Fenris spoke, "Come on, we have to move quickly. I have also called the cleaners. They will be here soon." Celine nodded and replied yes. While Matthay was worried, as even when he sent that many people, they couldn't kill these intruders, as he walked to the balcony, as cold sweat ran down his back, as he saw someone who he wished never to meet again in his lifetime, as he could utter Lord Fenris. Matthias then saw Celine, who was pretty infamous among the Lycans for being a cold-blooded killed, as he remembers Candril saying, "That bitch Celine cost us our brother and our whole territory." Matthias, with pity, had given them resources and stuff, as he saw them as his own sons, but now he started cursing them to death. "You bastards brought death to my doorsteps. May you too die like the dogs you are." Matthias had tried to escape, but some kind of invisible wall made it impossible for him to get out of the mansion. As Matthias soon came face to face with Fenris, Celine, and David, as Matthias tried to keep a smile on his face and greeting, "Lord Fenris, I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I would have stopped the attack." Celine snorted hearing this, as Fenris just smiled at Matthias, who was fearing for his life. As time goes on, as Fenris spoke, I guess you would have, but I must say you really must have had the worst luck in the world last time I told you that if you cross me again, you would be dead. Matthias didn't dare look at Fenris as he nodded as he said, My lord, if I have known those brats had angered you, I would have sent them your way right then. Matthias was sweating as he remembered the rebellion. He and Maleficus started to overthrow Lucian, only to be thwarted by Fenris, who ripped apart a quarter of the Lycans who had joined the rebellion single-handedly, and Matthias still remember the blood-covered image of Fenris. Matthias didn't want to go without taking at least one of them, as he transformed into his Lycan form and lunged at Selene, who he had perceived as the weakest, only to be stopped by Fenris, who grabbed him by the throat as he muttered, Will you look at that you at least die in a fight rather than as a coward? Fenris plunged his hand and ripped his heart out as Matthias died, and changed back to his human form as Selene used her sword to take his head to show as proof for killing him. Selene then gave a nod while Fenris looked at his son David and said, I must say you did really well. I will tell Sonia to take you to the Nordic coven for the ritual. David smiled hearing that and answered, Thank you, father. Selene soon brought the dead body back to Ordgraz, where both Craven and Kalaman was waiting for her in the meeting room, as they were going to discuss Selene's mission, as Craven, who lusted after Selene for two reasons. One was her beauty, and second was her being Victor's adopted daughter, making her really influential. While he made many tries to woo Selene, it all ended in complete failure after being rejected by her so many times in his anger. He tried to give Selene very tough missions to make her understand she couldn't disobey him without consequences. But it always backfired since Selene always completed them, making her more influential than him in some people's eyes. This was not something he didn't like, as he gave her the mission to kill and acquire the property of the so-called the Lords of the Crescent Wills. He expected her to fail. But to his shock, she not only killed one of the brothers, but also was able to make them flee. Craven gritted his teeth and thought, no matter she still managed to lose two of the other brothers, I can use this to at least discredit her. Kalaman was watching Craven's, just shook his head as he already guessed Craven's intentions, as he had instructions from Marcus to support Selene. As he watched Selene enter the room, she was still in her Death Eater outfit. As Kalaman spoke, Selene, I have heard that you killed one supposed wolf lords and was even able to make the other two flee. Many so-called pure-blood vampires in council clapped hearing this news, while Selene kept a stoic expression as she replied, Yes, my lord, I was able to kill the older brother Darius while the other two escaped. Before Kalaman could speak, Craven cut in, Selene, how could you make such an amateur mistake? By letting the other two Lycans escape, you made them hard to capture or find them again. Some of the council who were supported Craven murmured in agreement, as Selene gritted her teeth and replied, No, capturing them won't be a problem, as I was able to track them down and was able to catch their benefactor. Saying this, Selene threw the head of Matthias in front of the council. Some of the older members who were around the time of Lucian and Fenris easily identified the Lycan as Matthias, who was pretty well known among, as he was outed as Rouge Lycan by Fenris for trying to rebel. Craven was stunned since he knew Matthias as one of the older Lycans who was more slippery and powerful than the Crescent Wolf Lords, as Kalaman smiled, seeing this, and spoke, Good job, Selene, you not only succeeded in getting the city for us, but also able to get one of the most notorious rogue Lycans who caused the death of many Death Eaters. Craven looked like he swollen a sour pill as he hesitantly clapped, as he also noticed some of his supporters were looking at Selene with great interest, as he knew he was going to lose some of his supporters. One of the council members questioned, Miss Selene, you said that you knew the location of the two Wolf Lords. Selene nodded and answered, Yes, Councilmember Jane, I was able to get info out of Matthias about their location, but I fear those brothers would have moved immediately after hearing about this attack. So with all your permission, I'd like to finish my mission by hunting down the remaining two brothers. Kalaman looked at his fellow council members who nodded as he spoke. Then you have our permission to finish off the two remaining Wolf Lords. Selene talked with Kalaman for a while, then returned back to her room. As she was removing her battle gear, she remembered Fenris had given her the option to change her into a vampire similar to her sister, as she had a small smile on her face when she thought of Fenris, who was not only saved her sister, but also his benefactor is away, as she felt she would never have found the truth about her parents' murder without him. While Fenris was not sure what the deal was, But he got a message from Alexander and William about meeting them in their base, as they had something very serious to discuss, as Fenris apparat towards Cleaner's base, where both Willem and Marcus was waiting for him, as Fenris was curious and questioned, "What happened? Your father seems to be in a hurry." William and Marcus exchanged looks as William decided to speak. "We were attacked near the Bermuda Triangle. It was unexpected. The people that attacked us was different. They seemed to be capable toe-to-toe against Lycans." Marcus opened the room to show a pale, humanoid, amphibian-like creature. It looked similar to Abe Sapien from Hellboy. Fenris studied this merman as he asked, "Did you get anything from him?" Marcus sighed and replied, "We compelled him and got the fact his people are more or less like us. They seem to also have turned or mutated after their island went underwater. They seem to live under the Bermuda Triangle, and they seem to be able to live on land at least for a couple of hours. That also they seem to have two types or species. Among them, one of them is like mermaids from the legends, and the others are like him." Fenris once again looked at the new species as he asked, "So how did he die?" William was the one to answer. He somehow broke through the compulsion and committed suicide by holding his breath. Fenris nodded and said, "So he found out the fact we were getting info out of him. He killed himself to prevent more information from being taken." Celine was soon able to get back to Michelson Manor, where she met with her sister, who was very happy to see her, as Cecilia smiled and questioned, "So how was the mission?" Celine with small smiled and replied, "It went well because of both Lord Fenris and young Master David." Cecilia noticed Celine was upset as she asked what happened. Celine sighed and replied, "Just the normal council meeting and Craven trying to discredit me." Cecilia narrowed her eye and said, "So that bastard has not learned his lesson even after Lord Fenris tortured him." Celine was only involved with the council after Fenris advised her to get more supporters in council other than Kalaman, so she doesn't get forced into a situation she doesn't want. Also to loyal people under her to watch her back, as she started recruiting some of the ones she was close to her, and her right hand now is Khan, who is also the weapons expert. Celine nodded as Cecilia then changed the subject. "So you now have to get the other two brothers that I am sure Lord Fenris will come with you, as these two brothers interest him greatly." Celine raised her eyebrows, hearing Fenris will be accompanying her on this mission, as Cecilia continued, "But before that, we have to change you into one of us." Celine didn't go after Vragus and Crandril immediately, as Kalaman had told her that he could only give her 50 years of deadline during that time. If she could kill at least one of those brothers, he would be able to extend the deadline further. So she spent most of the time with her sister and training her newfound powers, and sometimes trained with Fenris, as both of them were able to find a connection, as Fenris with slight curiosity questioned, "It must be hard of you to control yourself in front of Craven and Victor." Celine frowned and answered, "Yes, it is hard, but I have heard from Cecilia, and you intend to make him more than just hurt physically." Fenris gave a nod as both were moving at great speeds, while every punch and kick from Celine was intercepted by Fenris, who finally went offensive and kicked Celine, causing her to be knocked into the side of a building as cracks formed on the wall, as Celine groaned in pain, as Fenris sighed and said, "Will you let your guard down, Celine?" "Now again." Celine nodded as she got, and said, "You are a real taskmaster. You know that, right?" Fenris just gave a grin, which only annoyed Celine, who once again started attacking, as this time Celine went with a flurry of punch and kicks. But much to her disappointment, Fenris easily defected each of them with precision as she tried to surprise Fenris with a flying triangle chokehold. But it backfired, as Fenris was easily able to lift her and slam her to the ground, causing Celine to release the hold and give up, as Fenris said, "Well, that is it for today." Celine, still in pain, nodded, and both were sitting and resting. Celine questioned, "I heard you tell David about the Nordic Coven. I thought that coven was a legend." Fenris was thoughtful and explained, "Well, the Nordic Coven is more peaceful compared to its counterparts. They don't like involving themselves in politics or war. You could say they're the most independent of the covens." Celine raised an eyebrow hearing that, as she couldn't believe a coven was able to function like that, as she knew Victor's personality and knew he wouldn't let a coven disobey council's order like that. As Celine questioned, "What is so special about this coven that Victor turned a blind eye towards them?" Fenris smiled hearing this and answered, Well, the Coven has a very mysterious ritual through which some vampires are able to gain powers. Victor tried and failed obviously, so he couldn't gain any powers. Also, he knows both Amelia and Marcus are supporting the Nordic Coven, so he is not going to take chances with them. Celine nodded, understanding the situation as she muttered. Victor backed out because he knew if he attacked the Nordic Coven in any way it will cause a civil war between the elders. Fenris nodded and added, also this time he knows he is on the losing side, so he decided to turn a blind eye. Celine snorted hearing that, and felt good at the fact Victor was powerless against Marcus and Amelia. Celine was curious and questioned. Victor was not able to gain the so-called power. Fenris shook his head and answered, no, it seems whatever or whoever is granting these powers didn't seem to like Victor, which is not surprising. Celine gave small smile hearing that as Fenris then thought of Samira and decided to warn Celine about her. Well, before you came, Victor had sired a vampire named Samira. She was Victor's favorite because of her resemblance to Sonia. But Victor threw her away the moment he found you. Celine was confused and asked, why are saying all this to me? Fenris sighed and answered, because if you kill Victor, Samira will come and try to kill you as she is fanatically loyal to Victor. She is a very intelligent and manipulative woman. Celine was surprised and asked, even after Victor threw her away, she is still loyal to him. Fenris nodded as Celine could only view Samira as a brainwashed woman, but she made sure to keep an eye out for her. Fenris and Celine then decided to just enjoy the silence, as Celine slowly came to view Fenris as a close ally and friend. Fenris soon decided to take Celine to the Nordic Coven to meet Lena and Vidar, as both operat to the Nordic Coven. Celine still felt sick as she was getting used to being operat or using portkeys as she groaned and said, I still can't get used to it. Fenris just gave a small laugh hearing that, as Cecilia was the same when they operat. While Fenris noticed both Vidar and Lena were walking towards them, as both had on their face. While Lena saw Celine with Fenris, she narrowed her eyes at Celine and was studying her as Vidar spoke. Well, my friend, it is good to have you back, and what can I do for you? Fenris smiled back and answered, it is good to see you too, Vidar. Well, I came here to show Celine the Nordic Coven. Vidar studied Celine as he asked, so you must be Celine from Orgratz. Celine nodded as Vidar smiled and said, I must say, both Marcus and Fenris speaks greatly about you. Celine was surprised and looked at Fenris, who just shrugged as Lena was watching Celine as she said, you lost your parents and even your sister whom you have reunited with because of Fenris. You hate the fact Victor manipulated you with lies. Fenris held his hand, gesturing Lena to stop as she spoke with an apologetic tone. I'm sorry, my eyes sometimes see too much and I am unable to stop it. Celine nodded but was shocked to hear someone read her like an open book, and she didn't understand what she meant as Fenris explained. Lena has an ability called soul sensory perception/reading, which helps her to read or see through someone's soul. She is able to watch events of their life. Forgive her, Celine, she can't fully control her ability, but it is helpful as she is able to slightly peer into future events. Celine nodded, but she was still on guard as Lena said, I'm not the only one with that ability. After all, Lord Fenris here is able to gain multiple abilities, some of which have been never seen before. Fenris just grinned and answered, what can I say? I am different. Vidar and Fenris started discussing about some of the problems faced by the new vampire recruits, as Lena had led Celine, and she explained in detail about the Nordic Coven as Celine with curiosity questioned, how did Fenris find the Coven? Lena smiled and answered, Fenris came upon our Coven during the 10th century. It seems he heard about our Coven's creation at that time. IT took some time, but my father soon trusted him to. I found his connection to Valisa enchanting. He is unlike no one I have ever seen. Celine knew from Fenris about the Vardor is a sacred ritual used exclusively by the vampires of the Nordic Coven in order to reach what they call the sacred world, also known as Valisa. Celine saw Lena studying her, as HSE asked, also you seem to have some sort of bond with him. Celine tried to control her emotion, but couldn't help but form slight blush from forming as Celine said, we have nothing like that. She mentally added, at least for now. Lena just looked at Celine for a while, then gave a smile and said, I see. Lena had peeked into Fenris' soul and found the fact he was very compatible with Celine. She was even able to guess her having a very unique relationship with two of them. Once again, things didn't go as expected as the information about the werewolf brothers came. Fenris had taken Celine to find them quickly as he didn't want these two to cause trouble in the future. Also, Fenris noticed Celine didn't ask anything about where the brothers were or anything after their return from the Nordic Coven as he asked, "What happened? You seem to be in deep thought." Celine broke out of her thoughts as she shook her head and replied, "Nothing, just thinking about some stuff Lena said." Fenris nodded and didn't push the issue as Celine remembered how Lena had told her about how both their future is linked to Fenris. Celine liked Fenris's company and found the fact he helped bother her and her sister to be a huge debt. Also, if like Lena said her future was with Fenris, she didn't mind that as she had heard about vampires taking mates from time to time. The interesting thing has Lena hinted at the fact both of them were his mates. Celine already knew vampires took multiple mates, so it was not something uncommon among their people. Celine looked at Fenris and questioned, "So where are the two brothers now?" Fenris sighed and replied, "They are in Orleans in one of the Matthews' old hideouts. From the information I got, they seem to wait for things to die out. They seem to know the fact you won't give up on hunting them." Celine grinned at the fact they were really scared of her as Fenris continued, "We will have to finish them off before they try to do anything too problematic." Fenris remembers how Darius was responsible for the humans' finding of their existence and the start of the Purge. Also, he had charmed a few snitches from Harry Potter to act like spy probes. All of them were modified with silencing charms, and they are able to record whatever they saw or heard. Fenris was curious about Celine's plan for Victor as he asked, "So Celine, did you decide when to take out Victor?" Celine, with a frown, replied, "I thought about simply killing him, but then realized it was too quick. I thought about destroying everything he held dear, like his legacy, position, and then slowly torture him to death." Fenris felt slightly bad for Victor. Unlike the real timeline where his death was swift and less painful, in this timeline Celine wants Victor to suffer a very slow and painful death. Fenris and Celine soon reached the Orleans base where the two brothers were hiding. Fenris made sure to cast a barrier around the base to make sure they didn't escape this time. The base didn't have many guards as Celine and Fenris were able to get it easily without alerting anyone were able to take out the guards. They slowly made it inside only to hear someone moaning as they looked at each other. Both had an idea who it was. The youngest brother Darius was a complete whore. While they looked around and found the fact the other brother of Regis was asleep as he was tired for being on the run. Celine went after Darius, while Fenris decided to go after Regis. Regis woke up from the sound of Fenris entering his room. But before he could transform or attack, he was easily killed Fenris by ripping his heart off, while Celine killed Darius easily as he was too focused on sex. As Celine shot both his mate and him with silver nitrate bullets, killing them quickly. Celine had taken Darius' head and returned to find Fenris waiting for her with Regis' head. Fenris just smiled and said, "Now you don't have to worry about Craven annoying you in the council." Celine nodded and said, "Yeah, now I can get some peace, and quite for a while." Celine wanted to know if the future seen by Lena is really true, as she decided to spend time with Fenris to get to know him better. While things were only getting worse for Craven as Celine's position was considered higher than him, since his only achievement was killing of Lucian, which was something some started to doubt as Craven was low-level theater. Him defeating Lucian was considered too much, as at that time there was no guns. Fenris was now getting close with Celine. It was evident to everyone that both are attracted to each other. Lucian, Cecilia, and Sonia were happy that both found each other. Fenris found Celine to be strong and loyal friend, or now girlfriend. Their relationship grew pretty quickly. But the interesting thing was both were not romantic at heart, so we both took pleasure in doing normal, everyday things like training or eating dinner together. Fenris and Celine were having dinner together as Fenris spoke. Our informers found something interesting. It is about Craven. Celine frowned and asked, "What does he want?" Fenris, taking a sip from his wine, replied, "He seems to have asked his minion Soren to be asked the Lycans on how to contact me." Celine didn't like he knew Craven was unhappy with how much attention and power she was getting. Also, he was unhappy with the council's decision to support me. She snapped out her thoughts and asked, What do you think he's planning? Fenris sighed and replied, I asked Cecilia to compel Soren to get info, and it turns out Craven seems to want an alliance with me. After all, his life in the council is not great as he thought it to be. It seems he wants more power, and by the looks of it, he wants to be an elder by killing all the elders and even some of the council members who are not agreeing with him. Celine scowled and says, then he will have to kill all the council members because it is pretty clear to anyone but Craven that they are jumping ship. Fenris with chuckle and replied, he figured that part out. It seems he was you to be his queen and be by his side. He was smart enough to understand your power and influence. Celine was now really thinking of killing the asshole, but Fenris calmed her down and said, we can use him to take out Victor, but also make him the scapegoat. Even though Victor has less influence, but his adopted daughter and progeny Samira has enough influence to cause trouble for us. Celine, if she killed Victor, this Samira, will use everything in her power to kill her and Fenris. If she finds out about him, that is. Celine was now curious about what Fenris had planned for Victor as she questioned. So what is your plan? Fenris grinned and answered, we will kill Victor when the time is right, and like I said, we're going to make Craven the scapegoat for Samira's anger and vengeance. But I am sure she will also try to kill you because of her jealousy. Celine was now really looking forward to seeing Victor killed as Fenris looked thoughtful and added, maybe we could reveal that Romulus being alive. If Victor finds out about his hybrid nature, I am sure he will flip, and if we had a certain rumor about him trying to create more hybrids, then Victor will surely lose control. Celine smirked as she knew Victor's obsession with keeping the bloodline of vampire pure. Fenris, who was thoughtful, added, we can easily make Craven think there is a power struggle between the Lycans and me. I am sure he will try to contact the rebellion group because of wanting revenge after. Against me that I am thinking of making Reyes play the role. She grinned and asked, isn't Reyes your most loyal Lycans? I remember you even granted him the Corvinus strain. Fenris nodded and with a smile replied, yes, but he is best friend with Lucian. I can easily create a rumor about how Reyes was angry at not avenging Lucian. I am sure that idiot will fall for it. Celine asked, but wouldn't he be suspicious that Reyes doesn't show any hostility towards him after all he thinks he killed Lucian? Fenris thought about it and said, then I will ask Zristo to do it. He is also loyal to us. But there's another Lycan who probably used this to cause a rebellion. His name is Marius. He is a capable leader. He has huge hatred for the vampires. He is a capable warrior, and he's similarities to Lucian in that they are both ambitious and strategic leaders who tried to organize the Lycans into a proper fighting force. Like Lucian, Marius also has a vampire, Alexia, as his lover, but I get the feeling that he is just using her as it gives him strategic advantage rather than having real feelings towards her. Celine questioned, is this Marius dangerous? Fenris scoffed and replied, the fool thought he would gain the leader of Lycan's position after he killed me with Matthews. But it backfired, and he is now exiled and running from death dealers. But thanks to his lover, he is able to escape them. But we will think about him later on. Fenris was really planning on destroying more of Victor's support before killing him. He wanted to make sure Victor has the front row seat to watching Victor fall from power and death. As both were walking back to their room, Fenris kissed Celine and went to sleep. Fenris was now thinking of the future. He was in relationship with Celine. They both are not the romantic kind, so they just enjoy each other's company. Fenris also started doing after Craven. It was easy to fool the idiot Zristo acted as the rebellion leader who wanted to take over Fenris' leadership. It took some time as Craven's thirst for power would become his downfall. Also, he knew Marius was making his move contacting Craven, while the change in timeline seems to have made Marius hunting for Corvinus' bloodline. After all, he couldn't get Fenris's bloodline no matter how hard he tried, and the only alternative was Corvinus clan blood, or especially the descendants of the third brother. Fenris, with smirk, thought, things are going to get more interesting. It took some time. Zristo was able to fool Craven into going with the plan to kill the elders, but they made sure to make him believe they needed to lay low for now. In the start of the century, Craven grew more impatient as he was losing influence quickly than he anticipated. He was now on his way to meet Zristo. It was raining like hell. A limo pulls up to the curb. We're in a seedy part of town. In the background, rainwater cascades over the side of a graffiti-ridden overpass. Craven and his bodyguard appear from the shadows. Zristo climbs out of the limo, trades a simmering look with the bodyguard as he opens the rear door. These two clearly hate each other. Craven slides into the shadowy back seat, which appears to be empty. Zristo closes the door, and Craven disappears behind a pane of black privacy glass. Reyes and the bodyguard take up positions on opposite sides of the limo. They stand there, frozen in silence, immortal warriors glaring at each other through the driving rain. Inside the limo, Craven is a mess. Soaking wet, Furious said, "I thought we were told to set up a base and lay low, not contact each other until our power base is secure." Whack! A hand explodes from the darkness and throttles Craven. It was none other than Zristo, who materializes from the shadows, whispering, "Calm yourself, Craven." His fingernails elongate, becoming razor-sharp claws that dig into Craven's flesh. He grips him harder, choking him. Zristo spoke up. "It is not easy to set up a power base right under THR nose of Fenris. Also, we have issues at hand. Your supposed gather supporters and kill of the elders." Suddenly grins, releases his grip. Craven slumps forward, clutching his throat. Zristo, with a growl, said, "And besides, we have been laying load. It's your men, Soren, who is attacking werewolves who not having any bounty on them." Craven, coughing, clutching his throat, with a strained tone replied, "I'm trying to keep my men at bay. Soren and his group are too bloodthirsty." Zristo, with frown, said, "Just concentrate on your part. From what I hear, you are not exactly the council favorite, as you were telling me." Craven gulped and replied, "I will get them to support me soon, but I need more time for that." Zristo glared at Craven and asked, "How much time do you want?" Craven replied, "I need at least 10 years give, or it would take to gather enough followers for our little project." Zristo sneered and replied, "Okay, but don't make me regret allying with you now, Craven." After that, with wham, the limo door slams shut to reveal Craven standing on the curb. The limo goes tearing off into the rainy night, swamping his shoes with filthy water. He stands there for a moment, boiling with anger, then whirls around towards his bodyguard. Craven, with anger, yelled, "Get the fucking car." Craven was angry as nothing was going as planned, as he was working with another werewolf named Marius. He wasn't sure about this, as this fellow didn't have the strength that Zristo had. While Marius was asking for a particular humans with names ending with Corvin or Corvinus names, Craven had an idea on what Marius was planning, that if this proposal works, then he doesn't need help from Zristo. Craven would be the victor if either of them is successful. Reyes, Lucian, and Celine entered then room, while Zristo was giving his report, Lord Fenris. This Craven is quite slippery. He seems to be already making contacts with other exiled werewolves, and from the reports, it is Marius. Fenris hummed and replied, "Keep an eye on him. I am sure some of the wolves with him would send us more information if we remove their exiled status." Reyes nodded, while Lucian asked, "What about that boy Michael Corvin?" Fenris smiled and replied, "He is true descendant of the Corvinus clan, his genetic heritage as the mortal descendant of Alexander Corvinus, making him the only known carrier of the Corvinus strain in its dormant form." Celine was slightly worried, asked, "Should I tail him?" Fenris nodded and replied, "It's best. If you do that, I am sure Marius would approach him sooner or later. Also, Craven probably giving him the information, even if we not counting Marius's lover Alexia." Lucian suddenly had gleam his eye and asked, "Should I involve Romulus in this? I mean, Victor would do crazy seeing him after his resemblance to me and Sonia. I am sure Victor will go crazy." Fenris grinned hearing this and said, "Go for it." While Lucian nodded and went to tell his son, Celine, seeing Fenris in deep thought, went and sat on his lap and asked, "What is it? You seem lost." Fenris sighed and replied, "Nothing. Just things are going to get more problematic from now on." Celine nodded, as Fenris kissed her and slowly got more passionate, so he carried her, teleporting to their room. Lemon start. Celine leaned in and kissed Fenris, who returned the kiss with twice the passion, his arms wrapped tightly around her, the heat only increasing when their tongues battled together. Celine could feel her body being pressed into his and his hands moving, groping her ass. Celine did waste time, took off her top, and unclipped her bra, while removing those tight leather pants she wore, which showcased the lacy black thong. She peeled the thong off and showed Fenris her pussy, nice and wet. Fenris lined up his rod and started slow as he felt sucked it into her body. The energy increased with each thrust, and Fenris' manhood pushed down in her tunnel and filled her up. Fenris leaned in and toyed with Celine's tits, allowing them to bounce when he grabbed onto them tightly. He leaned in and squeezed them to drive Celine completely wild. Celine moaned, "MMPPHHH," as Fenris toyed with her nipples and sent her overflowing with pleasure. Fenris had a sense of all of the right spots to make his lover melt in his arms. Celine wrapped around him tight and folded in pleasure. She closed her eyes, melting into it, while Fenris put his mouth on her right nipple and sucked on it. It made her insides just quiver and tighten around him. Celine's skin shined with sweat, and Fenris left a few marks on her as he sucked on Celine's nipples and knew how to hit all of the right spots to make her gush. She tightened around Fenris and milked his rod, and she flipped Fenris and now on top of him. Celine leaned in and clapped her thighs down onto his balls with each pumping motion, getting her fill of him, and milked him, crying out louder as she pounded her pussy down onto him and both climaxed with it. Lemon end. Next day, Celine, taking couple of her death dealer and Romulus, who was in the shadows to watch over Michael in a noisy, bustling with commuters. Celine was kicking back against a kiosk, waiting, watching, ready for anything. Celine glances up at the flood of humanity pouring down an escalator. Michael Corvin, sopping wet and miserable, slicks his hair back as he rides down the meta stairs. Celine lingers on his face for a moment, and looking at the picture Fenris gave her, she was sure this was the man. Celine starts scanning the crowd. Michael is absolutely riveted, unable to shake his stare. Clad head to foot in black leather, she's an exotic apparition, wild, mysterious, everything he is not. But the spell is unexpectedly shattered as the subway train goes, roaring out of the station. Michael once again looked around, but this time he couldn't find the women. Behind him, the exiled Lycans forced their way down the escalator and move off into the crowd. A beat, then Celine and the angelic vampires slink from the shadows and stealthily follow them. Across the platform, Michael shuffles up to the crowded loading zone. While on the platform, the Lycans split up, predators on the hunt, converging on Michael from opposite directions. Without warning, Marius's right hand, Gregor stops in his tracks and sniffs the air. He turns and catches a glimpse of the angelic vampire. Panic floods his face. Whipping out a modified Uzi, he screams bloods. An eruption of automatic gunfire and terror sweeps across the platform. Some of the commuters hit the deck, run for their lives, etc. The vampires dive for cover, skinning MP. 5 submachine guns and Glock pistols as glowing bullets, ultraviolet AMMO, ricochet all around the same time a young vampire, who's been standing watch outside, goes tearing into the station, tossing commuters aside like ragdolls, and disappears down the pedestrian tunnel. The gunshots, screams. We find Michael, along with several other terrified commuters, huddled behind a ticketing kiosk. He reacts as a teenage girl gets caught in the crossfire and drops to the floor, blood spurting from her femoral artery, while Romulus was making sure nothing happened to the idiot. The girl was shot, and she looks down at her leg and starts gasping in short, repetitious bursts. Michael scurries through the line of fire like an army field medic and starts feverishly applying pressure to her wound. Another explosion of automatic fire, as Michael cringes, shields the girl's face. Behind him, Romulus was shielding him by firing at any Lycan trying to come his way. While across the platform, Celine and the angelic vampire dives behind a kiosk. All around them, glowing rounds strike the walls, shattering tiles. Celine frowned and muttered into the comms, "They have like UV rounds. Everyone be careful." Celine knew Fenris's worries came true, but having already made a counter for them, which is enchanted suits and armor, which is good for blocking these rounds, and only a headshot is a problem. Another was the daylight ring, which again made sure UV lights won't affect them. while Lucian, Reyes, Zristo, etc., and other Lycans under Fenris had moonlight rings which made sure they didn't have a problem with silver nitrate gas. Celine slams a fresh magazine into her Glock 18, a pistol that can fire both single rounds and fully automatic bursts. Celine then takes aim and squeezes the trigger, blam. Bullets tears into some of the Lycan's shoulder, sending them slamming to the ground. He flees towards the subway tunnel, floor tiles exploding all around him. The Lycan scurries over the edge of the platform, drops down onto the subway tracks, and slumps against the cement barrier muttering, "Shit, shit, shit." Wincing in agony, he digs 2 fingers into his wound and tugs out the bloodied remains of a silver bullet. She dodges a look around the edge of the kiosk and sees Michael tending to the gunshot girl. Celine now reloads with sliver nitrate rounds instead of normal silver rounds and slams it into her Glock. She sees another Lycan charging his way, clawed fingers outstretched, is the smaller Lycan. Celine enters with both guns blazing and unloads 2 full Glock 18 into one of Lycans, most of them shot dead with silver nitrate coursing through their veins. Gregor charges across the platform to his comrade's aid, guns blazing, drawing Celine's fire, while suddenly Romulus slams into Gregor, causing both of them to fly out of the breaker room, tangled in a death grip, and slam against the opposite side of the tunnel. Plummeting to the gravel, they immediately face off, fangs bared, predator versus predator. Hush! The train goes through the nearby tracks. Romulus is thundering his way, fangs bared, glaring at him. The scare of his eyes turns blood red. Dark veins appear under his eyes, and his canine teeth extend into razor-sharp fangs. Gregor was afraid it was natural instinct, but he couldn't escape as Romulus used his speed to close the distance and rip his heart out. Romulus looked at the beating heart in his hand and mutters, "This is the best this idiot could do." It was raining. A huge steel gate loaded with surveillance. Equipment swings aside, and Celine drives through in a classic Jag with heavily tinted windows. The mansion is astounding, a relic from a bygone age, when feudal warlords ruled Hungary. This was Victor's mansion, while Celine strides through an exotic chamber. There was vampire socialites everywhere, mingling, huddled in. Corners, lounging on expensive divans. There are 3 groups. First one is warriors, second one is advisors, and third one is useless socialites. It's painfully obvious that Celine is cast from an entirely different mold. She's a steely-eyed warrior, a death dealer, and her purposeful stride speaks volumes. Celine walks past the socialites, who try to suck up to her. Then she walks past a spacious, tastefully lavish, where a striking vampire with the body of Adonis stands before a trifold mirror, quietly admiring his own form. There is 2 exotic servant vamps, both female, are kneeling beside him, delicately tracing their fingers over his muscled frame as they slowly dress him. They trade a glance, giggle like schoolgirls. Craven noticed Celine, and he knew from Marius their hunt for Michael Corvin was a failure, and the one who was responsible was Celine. While Celine comes striding into the training area, which was Spartan in appearance, dedicated exclusively to the art of war. Sparring mats, along with a soundproofed firing range, occupied most of the spacious garret, while the dense stone walls supported rack after rack of exotic stabbing weapons and firearms. All of them were silver-glinted from every lethal edge and surface. She slams the Lycan pistol down on Khan's desk. Khan was the second commander and weapons master of the Death Dealers. He was recruited by Marcus and knew about Fenris. He was also the first to get Fenris' pure vampire curse after Celine. While Craven entered the room, and just after him Coleman followed, he was avid supporter of Celine and Marcus and was called to report this incident. So Craven won't worm his way out of this one. Khan looked at the gun and with a sigh asked, "So our fears did come true?" Craven questioned, "What is this?" Celine, ignoring Craven, looking at Coleman, replied, "I found them with one of exiled Lycan tribes, and they were following a human." Coleman had read the reports about Khan having built something similar with silver nitrate. He remembered Khan reporting about chances of such weapon being created in the future. Coleman muttered, "So daylight, harnessed as weapons." He then looked at Celine and asked what about the human the werewolves were tracking. Celine shook her head and replied, "He ran away when the police arrived. I was going to do search on his identity after this." That was lie. In reality, he was taken away to meet Alexander to talk about the supernatural world. Craven didn't want so much attention on the boy. If an investigation happened, chances of his dealings with the Lycans would be found out. So Craven with scoff said, "Those savages probably just hunting the human for fun. It's probably not a huge deal as Celine is making out to be." Coleman glared at Craven and replied, "I want this investigated. If this turns out to be small deal, good for you. But if it is like Celine claims, then there is something going on." Celine was told about going to Michael's apartment. She quickly made it there and saw Fenris was waiting for her. They had inside information that Michael's apartment would attack by Marius and his group. They took 2 different rooms. Both then waited, and soon with their enhanced hearing, they picked up movement in the hallways. But then crash. Celine whirls as 3 werewolves explode through the window and come bounding down towards her with fangs bared, heading straight for her. Celine takes her Glock 18, a pistol that can fire both single rounds and fully automatic bursts. Celine then takes aim and squeezes a trigger. Blam. Bullets tears into Lycans, killing them instantly, while 2 other Lycans came crashing through the front door. Fenris was looking at the idiots, as both them had their fangs bared and pounced Fenris, eager to tear out the ancient blood's throat with their teeth. But, without so much as batting an eye, Fenris reached out and grabbed both of them by their throat and effortlessly lifted the 2 startled werewolves with both each on one hand, holding them up and away from him as they flailed and twisted in Fenris' grip, snapping fruitlessly at the empty air. They clawed at the outstretched arm, keeping them aloft, but his slashing talons had no effect on Fenris, whose eyes now change with irises turning into golden yellow and Scara turns black. This is when their animalistic brain comprehended who they messed with. Then, with a crack, Fenris snapped both their necks in an instant, then dropped the lifeless body to the floor and casually kicked the carcasses to the side. While this was happening, Marius was outside. Knew something was wrong. Since the team he had sent was not responding, and this was just a test to check if the vampires found the boy or not, in both cases he wouldn't lose much. If he finds the boy, it was good, and if he doesn't, Craven gets the boy, which means the blood will still be delivered to him. But now he knew something was wrong, and his instincts were screaming to run away. This made him slightly worried and said, "We are going. Quit this mission, something is wrong." Marius quickly made his escape, while not caring a bit for the wolves he had left behind. The wolves that now entered the hallway knew this was not someone to mess with. They even unknowingly turned back to human form in fear. As they turns to flee but the hallway. But then blam blam blam. A bone-shattering impact slammed repeatedly into their back. These wolves collapsed face first onto the dusty concrete floor, feeling a burning sensation along their spine. Fenris could see the shallow veins running along the back of their hands grew swollen and discolored, and the dark gray tracery extended from their wrists to fingertips, pulsating beneath their skin. Celine took out the rest of the easily. She looked around the dead bodies while clutching a smoking pistol. She quickly took out her phone and called the cleaners. Celine and Coleman knew they had to wake up Victor now, or chances are Craven will kill him, while Marcus was in sleep, but because of the protection charms from Fenris, it was almost impossible to kill him. They also have people ready for when Amelia's group is attacked. They made their way to the chamber room, as Celine and Coleman enters a narrow room lined with marble benches. It's cold as hell in here, quiet. She strolls up to a large mirror and stares at her reflection. BZZ. It becomes transparent. The guardian of the crypt peers out from a security booth on the opposite side of the glass. He knows exactly why they were here. Celine and Coleman nods a thanks as he hits a button. The opposite wall splits in half to reveal a thick plexiglass window. She slowly approaches it, peers into the crypt, which was darkly lit, cavernous, with a countersunk area crafted of polished granite. In the center of this lower area, housed within a concentric pattern of interwoven Celtic circles, are 3 very special hatches, each ornately engraved with a single letter. There's a V for Victor, an M for Marcus, and an A for Amelia. These are the tombs of the vampire elders. Kalaman looked at Celine, gesturing her to open Victor's tomb. Celine is crouched under Sorover Victor's tomb. She turns a heavy latch. Click, click, thud. Gas spews as the seal is broken. Then sounds chink, chink, chink. A large metal slab motors upwards, pivoting smoothly on its axis as it emerges from the tomb. KRCHD-JNK. It snaps into place horizontal to the floor. Laid out on the slab is Victor. He resembles a mummy, dried, withered, not much more than a collection of fragile bones shrink-wrapped in leatherized skin. His arms and neck are mottled with metallic implants, the female components of an elaborate intravenous feeding system. Celine tugs an ornate contraption made of twisted metal and curved glass from the side of the tomb drawer. This is the catalyst drip. She positions it over Victor's face. Then, raising her arm, she bites deeply into her wrist, tearing open a rather nasty wound. She squeezes the wound, letting drops of blood splatter into a tiny bowl on the catalyst drip. We follow the blood as it flows down through a delicate spiral of glass and silver. On the catalyst drip, as Celine's blood continues to flow through the delicate spiral, a shimmering drop forms at the end, dangles precariously. A beat. Gravity finally takes hold. The drop plummets through space and time and splats on Victor's lips. Celine didn't worry about Victor being turned by her. Since her blood was sealed from turning someone by Fenris, it was security measure since she practically stays with Victor and Craven. Normally, blood memories is an ability possessed by the vampire elders, who has skills to organize their thoughts and memories into a clear, cohesive vision, a detailed record of their reign, which they can impart on another elder with the giving of their blood. Taken from an immortal without these skills, the memories are chaotic and without a sense of time, disorienting even to an elder. Celine was trained by Fenris and Sonia to master this, such that she can now fully control which memories others could see. Celine made sure some of her fake memories are chaotic, otherwise Victor would be suspicious, because the ability to sort blood memories is not an easy-to-use skill, and it takes centuries to master it. The blood splatters the back of Victor's throat, starts seeping into the dried flesh. His withered cells greedily soak up the magic elixir. Dead cells begin to quiver, slowly at first, then faster, sparking to life at a geometric rate. Ancient capillaries snap taut. Slowly Victor will be back to life, but due to Celine giving chaotic blood memories, these images will be chaotic, disturbing, and constantly hounded by organic glitching effects. While Craven was getting more anxious with time, so he quickly called Soren and told him to get things done with Amelia. But poor man didn't know Soren would be dead soon, as the sun sets and stars twinkle to life over the waterfront. In the distance, a train arrives at the platform, and inside a death dealer looks out of the window to find their welcome committee. Craven's henchman Soren and his team of security vamps are posted next to several limos. Soren holds up a laser pointer, signals the ship with 4 quick pulses. Code 4. All is clear. Soren was now smirking, ready to see the massacre. But nothing happens, and suddenly bullets rain on them. Soren felt the pain for only a second before everything went blank, while Reyes and Zristo arrived checking that none of them escaped. They saw Soren wreathing in pain. He felt as if his veins were burning from effects of the sun. While he was shocked, Reyes, who smiled at him and said, "It is not UV liquid following through you, but diluted nightshade. It is highly poisonous to vampires." Soren muttered, "Filthy mutts." Amelia and her council members, a procession of pale figures in flowing black robes. Amelia is an elder, but she's strikingly beautiful and looks about 30 years, give or take. They slowly walks towards them, looking at the carnage, and asks, "So they were really in on this?" Reyes didn't like Amelia or the council members, but kept a neutral face and kneeling next to Soren and asked, "Tell the truth, for I will inject you a much powerful dose, and you will die slowly burning up." Soren knew he would die either way. Reyes, seeing this, stabbed the syringe into his leg, causing Soren to scream in pain. The pain became so much that Soren yelled. It was Craven. He wanted to kill all the elders and be the ruler of the vampires. Amelia now knew this was enough to take out Craven. But Craven had survival skills of a cockroach, and he knew something was wrong, and it was proven when Marius messaged him about there was no communication with Lycans group that was sent to attack Amelia. Craven decided either he killed other two elders or he will have worldwide hunt for him. So quickly made his way to Crypt only to find mummified Victor sitting on his throne with blood being pumped to him through IVs. Craven was terrified and unknowingly bowed in front of him. Craven is coward and okay with killing Victor when was still in hibernation. Craven is now alone before his master. Victor, even in this mummy-like state, radiates absolute power and control. Victor, with slight groan, questioned, "Do you know why I haven't awakened, my servant?" Craven lowers his head. He's clearly terrified of Victor. Craven, with wavering tone, answered, "No, my lord. But I will soon find out." Victor frowned and said, "You mean when you find?" Craven gulped and replied, "Yes, my lord." Victor nodded and replied, "You will let her come to me. We have much to discuss, Celine and I. She has shown me a great many disturbing things." He paused and then ominously added, "Things that will be dealt with soon enough." Victor saw someone that looked similar to that mutt Lucian and his late daughter Sonia. Victor slightly narrowed his eyes at Craven and asked, "I should have left my affairs as someone else's hands, since you seem to make mistakes a lot." Victor then squints in pain, closes his eyes, and added, "Still, her memories are chaotic, that no sense of time." Craven's face runs pale. It takes all of his courage to stand his ground as Victor slowly takes his gun from his pocket and was about to shoot Victor, who was slightly shocked seeing this. After all, he never expected Craven to betray him. But Craven, who just about to pull the trigger, couldn't move, and from the shadows, both Celine and Fenris appeared. Both their arrival shocked Victor, who was glaring at Fenris. Victor, now narrowing his eyes at Celine, and said, "You betrayed me." Celine cocked her gun and replied, "You killed my parents and blamed the Lycans for it." Victor glared at Celine while Fenris added, "You know, both Lucian and Sonia are alive. Also your grandpa." Victor was slightly shocked hearing this, while Fenris clapped, and both Sonia and Lucian also appeared from shadows, while behind them was Romulus. All of this was a great shock to Victor, who already guessed what Romulus was, and yelled on outrage that Abomination is still alive. Lucian and Romulus just smirked at him, while Celine wasted no time to shoot Victor. The bullets rained on him, killing him instantly. Normally an elder like Victor would have survived from such attacks, but now Victor was at the weakest state and his regeneration capabilities are practically at the lowest. While Fenris modified Craven's memories and compelled him to run, there will be witnesses who will see him running away, and the news about his death would soon spread. The interesting thing is Samira would search for Craven and even place bounty on him, but the Craven would be captured and tortured by Cecilia. Amelia arrived at Ordraz, and the news of Victor did slightly shock her, but she schooled her features and called for an investigation on Victor's death and on Craven. Amelia made a sure wake up Marcus just to make sure they can handle the issues at hand. Let's just say everything was against Craven, from witnesses who saw him ran away in fear to CCTV footage outside the crypt. So like Fenris planned, a huge bounty was placed on Craven, but this was not at his followers, although dwindled a lot. Still had good number, and his fanatical follower Samira came to Orgator. They held funeral in his honor, and Celine kept her disgust in check. This is when she saw the one Fenris had warned her about, Samira, who has pale skin and black hair and electric blue eyes. Next to her was man with dark blonde hair and electric blue eyes. Marcus, activating privacy stone that Fenris gave him, whispered to Celine, "That is Varga. He's the lover of Samira." Although Samira may see herself as the leader, but in reality he is the true ruler of the Eastern Coven. Also, he may seem loyal to Samira, but Varga is a man of duty and a staunch traditionalist, loyal to the elders above everything. Marcus was able to get Varga to their side. It was not hard because even with his skills, Samira constantly berated and dismissed him as nothing but another dumb muscle. Celine nodded and questioned, "Does she have support in Elite Council?" The Vampire Council, also known as the Elite Council, is a group of chosen vampires that were overseen by the Vampire Elders. They are the most powerful vampires within the Vampire Society, second only to the elders, and are responsible for deciding laws and political matters, as well as passing judgment on vampires who have broken the Coven's laws. Selene knows everything regarding council politics because of Fenris warning her. She was broken out of her thought when Marcus shook his head and replied, "No." She lost half of her power after she foolishly supported all Victor's plans for going after Fenris and other werewolves. So when all of them failed, the council's support also waned with time. Selene, who acted sad during the procession, could feel Samira glare piercing her back. Selene knew Samira harbored a deep-seated jealousy and later an intense hatred for her, stemming from the fact she replaced her as Victor's favorite progeny. While Samira also has doubts about Victor's death, especially since she knew Selene passed. But with so much witnesses and proof that Selene wasn't even in the same state at the time of Victor's death, made her stop guessing in that direction and started sending her minions to find Craven, who seemed to have disappeared into thin air. While Selene ignored the subtle glares from Samira, while Marcus was explaining to her the change in political climate with Victor's death and who will be the next elder, there is Cassius, who is the oldest member after Amelia. Then there is Orsav and Kalaman. But the later two are loyal to me and doesn't want the power that comes with being an elder. Selene asked, "What about Lena?" Marcus hummed, seeing the possibility, but shook his head and replied, "I don't know. The Nordic Coven has not involved themselves in politics for a long time. But if you can get her to participate, then chances are there." Selene nodded, while she also spotted Thomas, who was Amelia's lover, and the man had similar air to Victor, but was much easier to get along with, and he didn't have anything against Fenris for what happened with Amelia. But again, Amelia had baby girl just a century ago. They have a much better relationship than before. Selene was soon called to meet with Samira to discuss some things. Selene met Samira, who was staring at painting of Victor, and stood next to her. There was silence for a while before Samira spoke up. "You know, Victor was like father to me, that I was his protege and his vampire progeny." Selene nodded and thought, "Before he replaced you with me, and you hate me for it." While Samira turned to Selene with sadness and said, "I was saddened hearing his death. We are sisters and all, but blood-soaked W must work together to find Victor's killer Craven." Selene internally scoffed hearing the bitch say sister, but she kept her appearance and replied, "Yes, but Craven was given a lot of resources and power by Victor, even though many in the council felt Craven was too ambitious to with that many resources, it will be hard to find him." Samira's eyes twitched, slightly irritated hearing anything against Victor, but a part of her had to agree that Victor made a mistake giving Craven so much power. Samira sighed and replied, "Yes, and he paid the price with his life that I was hoping for your support in doing a worldwide hunt for Craven." Samira only found out about the power and influence Selene possessed. It was not small a 600-year-old vampire to achieve. When she heard about Samira burned with jealousy and her hatred for Selene increased, she even heard MD rumors or talks about making Selene the next elder because she was considered one of the strongest death dealers of all time, maybe after Sonya. Selene agreed with that request, but she knew Samira was planning something and Selene was right. Samira was planning to frame Selene, but the level of influence and power she had made Samira hesitant to move against Selene without clear plan. They talked for a while before heading back to their respective rooms. While Alexia, lover of Marius, was tasked with tracking Craven, which was like running in circles because they couldn't get anything, it was like he disappeared into thin air. Alexia has long, fiery auburn hair and blue eyes. She was driving back to inform the council about this, and probably warn Marius. But a part of her was now doubtful about Marius' intentions, and now, with so many defeats, Marius was much colder, and part of her was now warning her that he was using her, and she was just a pawn. Suddenly, she hears gunfires, and the car behind her panic makes contact with their rear quarter panel and trying to spin it out. Alexia stomps the gas in response, trying to correct the spin and tries to control the car. But the Alexia's car screams down the road and tumbles and wrecks out. In the wrecked car Alexia was bleeding and trapped inside. In pain, Alexia, with all her strength, gets out of the wreckage. She saw her fellow death dealer were also getting out. But she heard a pop sound and felt hit by something on her neck, and she pulls it out and sees it as a dart, She was sure her fellow death dealer are also shot down as she blacked out. When she regained consciousness, Alexia found herself tied to a chair. She tried to use her strength to break the cuff, but she felt all her strength was drained. Then she heard a voice. Don't bother, those cuffs are specifically made to hold vampires and werewolves. Alexia saw a figure coming out of the shadows, and it was none other than Fenris, Michael's son, and by his side of Lucian. This was shock to her, seeing Lucian alive, especially since she heard of his death. That's when she connected the dots and figured out Lucian let Craven live in return by faking his death. Alexia had seen portraits of both of them, but what surprised her the most was the fact Lucian was still alive. Alexia could tell just standing in front of him was nerve-wracking, and it was unlike the pressure she felt from even the elders. Alexia, gathering her courage, questioned, "Why have they taken me captive? I am a member of Easter Coven. They will come looking for me." Fenris just smiled and replied, "To make sure your lover Marius doesn't get any information from you." Alexia gulped, seeing the other party knew her relationship with Marius. Fenris curiously questioned, "You are sympathetic to Lycans because of how bad they were treated. That is nice. But why do you help Marius? He was exiled Lycan." Alexia frowned and said, "You exiled Marius, seeing his growing influence." Fenris chuckled and replied, "Idiot girl, and you believed him. Marius never had the level of influence he is telling you. I mean, think about it, girl, my powers are way beyond him. Just think how many wolves followed him through with his exile, only a handful, and half of them returned, and he was not exiled without reason. The idiot wanted to usurp me and restart the war. Think about, I was the one who helped achieve this peace, and Marius just wanted the war to start again and wipe out the vampires." Alexia didn't know the last part. She only knew Marius wanted revenge against Fenris. Fenris showed proof of Marius being a traitor, and even an audio that spoke about Alexia being just a pawn. Alexia sobbed hearing this, while Fenris slowly brought up her face to look at him and said, "You are really emphatic for vampire. So would you do the right thing for peace, or would you blindly believe Marius?" Alexia already had doubts, but this just further made her strengthen her belief that Marius indeed used it. She nodded and replied, "Yes, I will help you, Lord Fenris." Fenris did check her mind and found the girl did want to do the right thing. While poor man didn't know that in the future he would have fanatical follower who was obsessed with him at the level of Bellatrix Lestrange. While on his way out, Reyes questioned, "Is it really safe to let her come to our side?" Reyes found Alexia to be quite troublesome, but Fenris replied, "Don't worry, we will place preventive measure to make sure she doesn't betray our secrets." This time Lucian questioned, "So what about Marius?" Fenris frowned and answered, "We take him out. The girl gave us the location of all his bases." Lucian and Reyes agreed with this, since they had been letting him live for too long. As Lucian questioned, "Where is he hiding?" Fenris smirked and answered his so-called group lived in the sewers mainly. They do have other places, but because of the continuous sweeps by death dealers, they cannot stay in those bases for too long. But Marius was smart enough to understand the vampires are arrogant to believe there is no Lycans in their area. Lucian gave credit for the boat's plan, but he still hated Marius since the man was going around using his name to gather the other exiled Lycans. Fenris was now in his personal bar, lighting himself a cigarette, fills a tumbler with ice. Then he selects a fresh bottle of Jewel of Russian classic vodka and twisting off the cap, hesitating. Deciding otherwise, Fenris dumps out the ice, pours himself a double shot, and slams it back before refilling the glass with ice and pouring himself a healthy dose. Fenris chugs his drink as he saw Celine enter, and she had frown on her face as Fenris asked, "What happened?" Celine sighed and replied, "Alexia's disappearance caused a slight commotion among the covens." Fenris nodded, having already guessed this would happen. As Celine asked, "Did you have to take her alive?" Fenris sighed and replied, "Yes, she's a spy for Marius, and it wouldn't be long before she tells something important to Marius. Also, she was manipulated, and she is a very good tracker who could be a good asset for our group." Celine reluctantly nodded, but she still didn't like that woman because the girl gave her a weird vibe whenever she was near Fenris. She was okay with Lena, who was now like sister to her, and sharing Fenris with her wasn't that hard. As she said, some of them think Alexia was able to track down Craven, but she was killed in the confrontation. Fenris hummed and said, "Tell Samuel and Khan to get their group ready to take out Marius." Celine nodded and replied, "Samuel is raiding one of Marius' bases, and Khan is checking if they accounted for every exiled Lycans. Samuel is the commander of Alexander Corvinus' cleaner squad, while Khan is the right hand of Celine, was the weapon expert. While on one of Marius' bases was Samuel and his cleaner crew. The rest of his cleaner crew wore unmarked black commando uniforms and fixed, unsmiling expressions. No badges or other insignia betrayed their identity. All the soldiers' neutral faces gave no sign of it. Samuel was proud of their professionalism. The team moved like a well-oiled machine, as well they might. This was hardly the first time they had pulled off an operation of this nature. Samuel's eyes narrowed at the werewolves' bodies around them, all of them shot down with silver nitrate bullets. Samuel ordered into his comms, "We have to move." The armed cleanup crew finished in less than 15 minutes. The last commando out of the room reported to Samuel, who nodded and removed a handful of metal discs from a pouch on his belt. The polished silver discs resembled oversized coins. He hurled them into the bunker as the discs skitter across the concrete floor of the mine before coming to rest somewhere deep inside the hidden base. A faint hissing noise reached his ears as Samuel moved out of the building. As the metal discs sprayed a fine mist from the tiny holes that had opened up along their edges. Gas fumes soon filled the bunker, which had been stripped to its bare walls. A time mechanism caused one of the discs to split in half. Two shiny contacts were exposed to the volatile atmosphere inside the mine. A crackle of electricity arced between them. The explosion destroyed what little of the bodies had left behind. The cleaners also thrown similar explosives around the building. As roiling ball of flame erupted from the building, the accumulated explosive gas destroyed. Celine, Fenris, Lucian, and Khan stepped over the lifeless bodies of a pair of Lycan guards. Each corpse bore a single bloody bullet wound in its forehead. Lena even showed up for this fight in silver breastplate and a white fur-lined coat that is exclusive to the Nordic vampirth. She gave both Fenris and Celine a nod. The dead Lycans had defended the entrance to the werewolves' underground lair, but not for long. Celine, Fenris, and Lena had to assume, however, that the short-lived gun battle had been heard in the unexplored catacombs below. So much for the element of surprise. Fenris looked at Khan, who nodded and raised his hand, signaling the death dealers behind him. The assault team, consisting of 6 additional operatives, swept forward, staking out defensive positions in the newly secured stretch of tunnel. Oiled black leather helped the taciturn death dealers blend in with the inky shadows around them. AK-74 assault rifles, loaded with silver ammo and equipped with infrared night scopes, were prepped for action. Celine chose to stick with her trusty Berettas. She kept her guns raised and ready as Khan cautiously approached the open pit. Peering over his shoulder, she saw that the top of the shaft had been surrounded with chain-link fencing and concertina wire. Apparently, the Lycans didn't want visitors. Khan unhitched a silver-plated grenade from his belt and pulled the pin. He tossed it toward the pit, and Celine held her breath as the explosive device bounced noisily across the cement like a huge ball bearing. It clinked one more time before disappearing over the edge of the pit. Celine thought she heard something moving below. Some of the Lycans scrambled up the ladders toward the unknown source of the echoing gunshots. In theory, 2 of their fellow Lycans were posted at the top of the shaft, but Taylor wasn't holding out much hope for their chances. If they had been the ones doing the shooting, they already would have called for reinforcements. Just then the grenade tumbled past him. His beady eyes widened in alarm as the silver fragmentation device clanged against the concrete walls before splashing down into the deep puddles of murky water at the bottom of the shaft. Oh shit, Pierce swore, only a few rungs beneath him. Like every other Lycan climbing the ladders, Taylor threw himself flat against the metal rungs, trying to present as narrow a target as possible. A flash from below was followed instantly by an earth-shaking blast that sent a fountain of sludge rocketing up the shaft, along with a spray of white-hot silver shrapnel. The toxic fragments sliced through Lycan flesh and clothing, shredding Taylor and the others to ribbons. His leather gear was instantly turned into bloody confetti. He screamed in agony as he lost hold of the ladder and fell backward, while inside Marius, who heard explosion and the strident wail of twisting metal coming from outside his private chamber, and he rushed to the window, pressing his face against the streaky glass. The compartment looked out onto the enormous central cavity of the bunker itself. Catwalks, ladders, and tiers of forgotten subway tracks covered the towering walls of the massive excavation like rusty metallic ivy. Marius' eyes narrowed in concern as, near the top of the gargantuan bunker, a huge steel pipe burst asunder, releasing a torrent of pressurized water high above the lower levels of his people's sanctuary. An artificial deluge poured down upon like a sudden storm. Marius was in slight panic knowing they found him, but he was pretty sure getting out of here won't be easy. As he quickly tugged a UV pistol from his belt and racked a brightly glowing round into the chamber and went out ready to fight, while armed Lycans stalked down a debris-littered access corridor leading to the violated entrance shaft. The gloppy floor was awash in the blood and mangled remains of their murdered comrades. Fragments of deadly silver shrapnel were still embedded in the flaking brick walls surrounding them. More fully transformed werewolves joined their ranks, crawling up through open sewage grates from dens and whelping chambers one level down. But they felt as something dangerous coming. Every cell in their body was screaming for them to get out of here. Just like a specter, Fenris plummeted into the pit of drainage tunnel and landed with the nimble elegance of a jaguar, so inhumanly smooth. Fenris had his true face revealed with irises turned golden yellow, their sclera turned black, and dark veins appear under his eyes. Fenris' appearance, every Lycan there took a step back, and their hands tremble. In fear, some of the Lycans started shooting. Fenris just raises his hands, and the bullets, like a cloud of obedient bees, slow and come to a stop. They hang frozen in space, fixed like stainless steel stars. The Lycans are unable to absorb what they are seeing. As Fenris plucks one of the bullets from the air, he drops the bullet, and the others fall to the floor. Just then Selene, Lena, and the death dealers came swooping down through the veil of smoke like leather-clad angels of death. All hell broke loose. Bright white flashes blazed from the muzzles of their clattering weapons as they cut down the first wave of Lycan defenders. The clamorous report of the guns drowned out the screams and yelps of Lycans and werewolves alike. Bodies, both human and otherwise, dropped onto the floor of the tunnel, joining the ghastly agglomeration of mud, blood, and shredded carcasses clotting the corridor. Although caught off guard, the surviving Lycans hurriedly regrouped and took the battle back to the enemy. All hell broke loose as the embattled defenders returned fire. Red-hot silver streaked past glowing UV rounds in the smoky air between the oncoming vampires and the besieged Lycans. Selene impatiently squeezed the triggers of her twin Berettas. She emptied one pistol completely, then discarded the spent weapon. This was taking too long. The Lycans weren't putting up much resistance. The surviving Lycans hurriedly tried to retreat back, but Lena wasn't going to allow that as she simply took out a flipped. It turns into a double-edged sword. The coin was enchanted such that when it becomes a sword when it heads, or a lance when the coin comes up tails. She then sped towards the remaining Lycans, leaving only a whitish spectral trail on her path, making her movements even more difficult to keep track of. As she cut down the Lycans without any resistance, while Fenris was admiring her sword skills. Fenris simply signaled then to split up and search the area for Marius, while all of them went their specific routes. Soren's henchmen surged forward Q&D seeing Lena. He now had a bloodthirsty smile on his face. Soren only saw her once at a coven meeting and lasted after her, but the Lena scoffed and blew him off. It angered Soren, who tried to find her again, but never got any information about her. Soren peeled off his leather jacket, revealing a pair of twin silver whips wrapped tightly around his torso, sneering at Lena as he uncoiled both whips in two fluid movements. Lena sped towards Lycans once again, becoming a blur from the speed, Only a whitish spectral trail on her path could be seen. She was in perfect form, cutting the enemy Lycans down, each stroke and parry, a grace it was deadly dance. Soren before had confidence, an adamantine sense of certain superiority Soren. But seeing Lena's powers, he had tremor of apprehension. The silver whips felt at home in Soren's grip, one after another. The whips lashed out, but Lena easily dodged them and closed the distance before Soren could react, and with swing of her sword, she took Soren's head. While thing happening, Craven was running away, trying to find another exit, only to run into Cecilia and Romulus's group. Carvin, seeing Cecilia, was shocked and said with trembling tone, "You are Celine's sister." Cecilia gave a bloodthirsty smile and replied, "Yes, and I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." Cecilia revealed her true face as her sclera of her eyes turned blood red. Dark veins appear under her eyes as the blood pumps forcefully through them, and her canine teeth extend into razor-sharp fangs. This scared Craven, who in panic raised his gun to shoot, but Cecilia sped towards him and pierced her hand right through his chest and grabbed his heart, and Craven tried to attack her. But Cecilia started slowly crushing his heart, as Craven groaned in pain and pleaded, "It was Victor. I was just following orders." Cecilia glared at him and said with venom, "This was for my parents," while ripping out his hearts with little to no effort. Craven heard it, but soon fell like puppet who had his strings cut. Angry brown eyes glared back at Fenris, then instantly changed color, turning a brilliant shade of blue. A low rumble began in Marius' broad chest, rapidly deepening in timbre. Bone and gristle crackled loudly as the Lycan's skull began to stretch and deform. Marius looked stronger, and Fenris used sleight read his thoughts and found out that this bastard was able to get some of Michael Corvin's blood from the hospital. But since he didn't get the blood of the vampire elders, his plans for becoming a hybrid is stalled. Also, since Marius only became a Lycan as later part of war, he didn't know full strength of Fenris, and he just thought many of the stories were exaggerated. So being injected with Corvinus blood made him slightly cocky and more confident in taking Fenris. Fenris looked bored, seeing Marius completed his obscene metamorphosis. The muscular Lycan no longer looked remotely human. Instead, an all-out werewolf faced Fenris across the muddy floor of the forgotten bunker. Icy water rained down on them, and they splashed through greasy, iridescent puddles as they circled each other in a lethal dance of fangs and claws. Bright Lycan blood stained the tips of the twin scourges. Let's settle this once and for all. Livid red scars marked the werewolf's snout, where Soren had slashed Ray's face with his whips. The Lycan's clothing lay in a shredded heap at the creature's feet, replaced by a bristling coat of coarse black fur. Cobalt blue eyes glared at Soren with predatory intent. A low, basso growl rumbled from the depths of the werewolf's ample chest. Fenris shrugged and transformed into his werewolf form, with bones realigned into a more lupin skeleton as his muscles bulge and spasm, while the human skin is shed, revealing the werewolf fur underneath, which was enough to scare the hell out of Marius, who took a step back as his Lycan instincts were screaming to run. But too late, Fenris lunged for the enemy. He grabbed Marius with his hands, chomping down on the Lycan's throat. His teeth tore through flesh and sinew. Finally, tasting blood as Marius cried out in agony. Fenris pushed Marius' body onto the ground and transformed back to normal form. He then wiped the blood from his mouth. She ran down a muddy tunnel, holding the Beretta in front of her. Brackish water trickled down the moldy walls. Spider webs impeded her progress, clinging to her like filmy fingertips. Brick and mortar crashed behind her. She spun around and saw two rampaging werewolves explode from a collapsed archway. The gigantic beasts howled at the sight of her and immediately gave chase, pouncing from wall to wall as they charged toward her, fangs bared, eager to tear her to pieces. Froth flew from the corners of their snapping jaws. Celine ran for her life, firing back over her shoulder. Gunshots echoed loudly in the dusky corridor, and the lead werewolf hit the mucky floor. His furry bulk tumbled end over end, splashing mud and clay everywhere. Smoke rose from the silver-tainted bullet holes in his pelt, filling the tunnel with the smell of burning flesh. One down, Celine thought, not slowing down for a second. Her lungs sucked down the polluted air as she sprinted at full speed down the tunnel. Not far behind her, the second werewolf lunged through the acrid smoke hissing from his dying partner. His powerful hind legs carried him forward by leaps and bounds. Celine could practically feel the beast's hot breath upon the back of her neck. She tore around a corner, still heading roughly toward Fenris, and risked a look over her shoulder. Shit! The werewolf was still in hot pursuit, splashing through the slimy puddles like a veritable hound of hell. Her head snapped around to see where she was going, and another werewolf suddenly reared up in front of her. An inhuman roar assailed her ears as a monstrous claw swiped at her. Decades of hard-won battle experience kicked in, and Celine sprang into the air, soaring just below the vaulted ceiling of the macabre tunnel. She arced over the looming werewolf, firing her gun as she smoothly tumbled head over heels. Silver riddled the beast's skull, and he dropped to his death only a heartbeat before Celine's boots splashed down less than a meter past the exterminated creature. Landing squarely on the floor, she expertly ejected an empty magazine from her Beretta and slammed a fresh one into place. 2 down, 1 to go. She turned around with deadly speed and opened fire on the onrushing werewolf. White-hot death flared from the muzzle of the Beretta as she nailed the creature in the air above the second Lupin fatality. Scarlet flowers blossomed across the monster's furry chest. The werewolf crashed to earth, twitching spasmodically not 20 paces away from her. Jagged claws flailed wildly, and furious jaws snapped at empty air. The spewing foam around the beast's muzzle took on a crimson hue, but still the creature refused to die. Celine stepped forward calmly and delivered 2 point-blank shots to his skull. Fenris looked around, seeing some of the last exiled Lycans rounded up. Khan reported they're the only ones who were smart enough to surrender. Fenris nodded, while Cecilia was dragging Craven's body and Celine was behind her. Fenris ordered, "Let the cleaners do their job. After all, we have our work set out for us." Everyone nodded, and soon they returned back to base with Celine and Fenris visiting Alexia, who looked happy seeing him. Fenris sighed and said Marius is dead, and so has majority of the Lycanae that followed him. Alexia nodded, since she was pretty much sure about the outcome, and Fenris added, "You'll be under Celine, so make sure not to destroy this chance I am giving you." Alexia nodded and replied, "I will not fail you." Fenris looked at Celine, who sighed and replied, "Okay." As Fenris and Celine were returning to their room, Celine was hanging up her guns while Fenris couldn't take his eyes off her black skin-tight suit. While Celine noticed this, she gave Fenris a smirk and huskily asked, "Help me with this?" as she tugged on the zippers of her tight black leathers. The tailor bodysuit was like a second skin, but suddenly she couldn't get it off fast enough. Fenris' skillful hands came to her assistance, and the leather slid from her body, leaving her exposed and vulnerable before his gaze. His eyes gratefully devoured every inch of her bare white skin. He gazed at her in wonder. He pulled her to him with surprising strength. Her passion rose, and she surrendered to the moment. Their mouths still locked in a ravenous kiss. She peeled off his jacket and his shirt. Her hands explored his naked chest. But Celine soon pulled away from Fenris and smiled, climbing onto the bed. Fenris joined her, resting his weight atop her pliant curves. Fenris leaned forward and kissed her. She responded with same level of passion. Their skin brushed together in a tantalizing caress. Her fingers stroked the firm, masculine contours of his back. His hungry mouth found her breast, and his tongue slid down her hard nipples and sucked away at her. Jolts of pleasure shot through Celine as she moaned. Fenris lined up his length and pushed it inside her. Fenris loosed his eyes when pushing into her as Celine grabbed onto him in response. Fenris groaned as Celine smiled when raising her hips up and down to take as much of Fenris' length inside of her. His length stretched her out as Fenris gripped Celine's leg and started to push into her. Celine wrapped her legs around Fenris to take him deeper inside. Every time Fenris' length pushed past her depths, she moaned and enjoyed it. They changed position as he rolled over Celine's stunning body, pushed down, and worked down on a Fenris pole. She rocked up and down. Fenris saw her beautiful, round breasts bouncing right before him. The delicious sight put a smile on Fenris' face when he touched her tits and squeezed them extremely hard. Celine bit down on her lip and let out a cry as her womanhood shoved its way down into her pussy. Fenris slammed down into her and made her gush. Celine leaned in and kissed Fenris on the side of the neck. Fenris's hands moved into her body and made her lose it completely for him. Her tight walls closed down onto his rod, and he pushed deeper inside of her. Celine let out another fierce cry and slammed herself down onto him with each ride. Fenris kissed Celine's nipples and made her cry out in pleasure. He sucked her as she rode him harder. Celine bounced up and down, while Fenris worked his mouth on Celine's nipple and sucked her. She hugged Fenris's head against her nipples, and he sucked them as his fingers danced back and forth down her back. Their bodies connected together in an endless round of pleasure, after that both finally climaxed. Fenris was now thinking about the power vacuum left behind after Victor's death. Some of the regents and heads are trying to take control. Another issue was with Victor's death. The whole fake idea that their bloodline will die with the death of an elder was revealed. At least those that believed Victor was the progenitor for the vampire species. But no one was strong or stupid enough to attack or even fight Marcus or Amelia, since their power is not to be underestimated. Also, Samira has proposed or subtly pushed the idea of selecting a new elder. Fenris was also looking out for any new threats. The only one at the time was Samira. The Victor fanatic is searching high and low for Craven and even any sign that Celine is the one who killed Victor. But poor women was completely out of luck, and some of the vampire councils were considering either Celine and Lena. They were not sure about Samira, who didn't have support since she came into power only through Victor, while Celine had denied high position to being a death dealer. So obviously their respect for Celine was higher than Samira. Also, Alexia was integrated into their group smoothly, but Fenris felt she was too excited to get his every command fulfilled. But this was saving grace for Alexia because Samira already had guessed her identity as a spy from Marius previously. Now Samira was sipping a glass of blood and thinking about her future plans. She was hoping to use Alexia in the future, but Alexia's so-called death put a crux in her plan, and she could tell the council about this. Since she was the one who recruited Alexia, and now openly saying Alexia was traitor would only cause a dent in her reputation. Samira turned to her lover-slash-slave Varga, who was a handsome man with dark blonde hair and electro-blue eyes. She said, "Have you found anything suspicious regarding Celine?" Varda shook his head and replied, "No. She seems to be more interested in catching exiled werewolves and talking issues with Lord Marcus or Lady Amelia. She has done anything out of the norm till now." Samira frowned and with a sneer said, "Keep looking. I want eyes on her 24/7. I know that bitch is up to something. I have suspicions regarding her." Varga asked, "Is it regarding Lord Victor's death? I thought it was Craven who killed him." Samira growled and yelled, "I know she definitely had hand in that, and I will prove it to everyone." Varga stayed silent. He knew not speak when Lady Samira was like this, and he was slight worries about her motives, since he was the one who ran the Easter Coven on Samira Bialf. So he knew her chances of becoming was quite close to NIL, as none of the council members felt she had any right to be an elder. So he was worried about her plans for the future, since only way she could become one was by taking over fully or killing the other elders. But they're not easy, and Varga was not one to let something like that happen. As he vowed in his mind, "My loyalty is always go the council and elders." Poor Samira, who looked down on Varga, as she did not believe him to be not capable of independent actions. Fenris was with Samuel and going through a few reports given to him by Marcus, William, and Alexander. They were planning to recruit more men into the cleaners, since it was becoming harder to clean up the mess left behind by idiots like Samira. Also, Fenris knew in the future chances of a war with human is possible, but he had plans to counter such things, and everything was in place. They had set mass memory manipulation crystals in every place. Samuel looked hesitant, but steeled himself and spoke up. Sir, with all due respect, is it true that there is a possibility of war between supernatural and humans? Fenris sighed. He knew this was going to be topic sooner or later. He answered truthful. I won't lie to you, there is huge possibility of war between races. Samuel was pale. He knew Lord Fenris has been doing his best to keep the damage to a minimum and to keep the supernatural that he knew of people like Lucian, Selene, Marcus, Alexander, and added to Lord Fenris the chances of human race surviving is very low. Samuel with grim tone asked, Isn't there any chance to prevent this? Fenris sighed and replied, We're doing our best, but you must understand people like Craven or Samira or Marius have human contacts. Some of them probably had agendas of their own. Also, you can already understand humans fear what they don't understand and hate what they can't conquer. Samuel sighed, knowing it was the truth. But he knew people like Fenris have created special safe spaces for even humans and Lycans in his territory. He did not see humans as inferior or cattle. Fenris was someone who just wanted to keep the world of these two power-hungry species from fighting each other. Samuel's loyalty was always toward Lord Fenris and Lord Corvinus. Obi spoke up in utmost loyalty. We cleaners are with you on every step of the way. Fenris nodded and told Samuel, What are the reports on the company Antigen? Antigen is a biotech pharmaceutical company employed by world governments to contain and experiment on vampires and Lycans after they are captured. This was after the purge had begun. But this company in reality was front-operated by the Lycans to fool the governments into believing that they are extinct, as to turn the humans' attention to killing the old adversary of the Lycans, the vampires. The head of Antigen is Dr. Jacob Lane. Their headquarters are likely located in Hungary. Samuel reported, Just like you thought over the years, this biotech pharmaceutical company has been making a name around the world. Also, Dr. Jacob Lane is the director of Antigen. Fenris hummed and questioned what about his son. Samuel produced a holographic image of a tall man with reddish-brown hair from his watch and said, Quint Lane, we had to do quite some digging to get information about this person. It seems Dr. Jacob seems to keep very record of him secret. Samuel hesitated and said, I got a report from Dr. Corvinus that some of his blood that was on the hospital blood bank was stolen. Fenris narrowed his eyes hearing that and thought, So Quint Lane, even here, will probably become a evolved Lycan. As an enhanced Lycan, Quint has the ability to change into a werewolf form more than twice the size of a normal Lycan, with much greater strength due to the presence of the Corvinus strain in his blood. The only way Selene won in the canon was because of using Quint's own enhanced self-healing against him. Due to the multiple injections of Corvinus DNA, Quint is seemingly completely immune to the Lycan's allergic effects of silver and is unaffected by it when used in any conventional means. However, his immunity to silver is revealed to be only effective in his Lycan form or is only partial, as he is unable to resist the effects of the silver grenade Selene stuffs into his stomach. A large amount of silver sent directly into his organs and bloodstream combined with the exploding grenade, causing him to explode. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting an eerie glow upon the scene as Fenris and Lena stood before the old mountain base of Victor. Lena furrowed her brow and remarked, So, this is where the old fool had his private army hidden away? Fenris nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It had taken him quite some time to uncover the location of Victor's secret base. It was discovered that Victor had been amassing a formidable private army, intending to use it to reclaim control from the other two elders. Unfortunately for him, his plans were thwarted by his untimely demise, leaving his forces and leaderless. It seemed his secret second-in-command Rowan to charge and is leading the men to fulfill Victor's vision and dreams. As they stepped forward to face the dormant army, Fenris gave a terrifying roar that alerted the army of vampires inside. Fenris looked at Lena, who nodded and her grip tightening on her weapon. And with that, Fenris and Lena charged into the fray, their resolve unwavering. The echoes of their battle cries filled the chamber as they clashed against the remnants of Victor's private army. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by the sound of footsteps and the unmistakable click of firearms being loaded. Fenris and Lena swiftly took cover behind crumbling pillars as a group of vampires emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. Fenris gritted his teeth, recognizing the threat they posed. Vampires with guns, loaded with silver nitrate bullets. This won't be an easy fight. The vampires closed in, their movements swift and graceful. The air filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder as they unleashed a barrage of bullets toward Fenris, exploiting his vulnerability to silver. With supernatural reflexes, Fenris dodged and weaved, narrowly evading the deadly projectiles. Fenris had his tribrid form unleashed, his eyes burned with an intense orange hue, the black sclera and dark veins adding to his menacing appearance. His elongated canine teeth protruded into razor-sharp fangs, ready to rend flesh and bone. As the enemy army approached, Fenris braced himself, muscles rippling with power. With a surge of supernatural strength, he lashed out, decimating his foes with a single blow. Bodies flew through the air as his superhuman might shattered walls and doors with ease. Swift as a gust of wind, he darted through the chaos, his speed unmatched by any creature on the battlefield. He effortlessly outmaneuvered his adversaries, his reflexes allowing him to dodge attacks that would have struck true against others. His agility and dexterity were a marvel to behold, as he leaped, flipped, and scaled obstacles with uncanny ease. Enhanced senses granted Fenris an unparalleled awareness of his surroundings. His hearing detected the faintest whispers and the softest footfalls, while his sight pierced through the darkness with clarity. His sense of smell captured the scent of blood, fear, and impending danger, alerting him to the approach of his enemies long before they came into view. Unyielding and virtually indestructible, Fenris withstood blows that would have felled any other being. His superhuman durability allowed him to shrug off trauma with minimal discomfort, while his enhanced healing factor swiftly repaired any injuries he sustained. Even the effects of vervain or wolfsbane, though momentarily weakening, were no match for his rapid recovery. Fenris grinned and yelled, "Come at me with everything." While on Lena's side the gunfire intensified, Lena sprang into action, her speed a blur as she darted between the vampires. With her sword in hand, she struck with lethal precision, severing limbs and incapacitating her foes. Each swing of her blade was swift and calculated, leaving a trail of disarmed vampires in her wake. Meanwhile, Fenris utilized his hybrid strength and agility to counter the relentless assault. With lightning-fast movements, he closed the distance between himself and the vampires, his razor-sharp claws slashing through their ranks. The silver-infused bullets grazed his skin, causing momentary pain, but his enhanced healing swiftly repaired the wounds. Despite the vampires' formidable firepower, Fenris and Lena fought back with unwavering resolve. Fenris leaped from one adversary to another, overpowering them with his supernatural strength. Lena's sword danced through the air, deflecting bullets and striking with deadly accuracy. The battle raged on, a chaotic symphony of gunfire, clashing blades, and snarls of pain. Both of them joined forces during the fight. Fenris and Lena's synergy was evident as they seamlessly coordinated their attacks, each covering the other's vulnerabilities. A being of true immortality, Fenris was impervious to most weapons. When Lena engages in combat, her movements become a blur as she effortlessly darts from one location to another at an astonishing pace. It is as if she possesses the power of teleportation, disappearing from one spot and reappearing in another in the blink of an eye. Her opponents are left bewildered and disoriented, struggling to anticipate her next move. Harnessing his werewolf heritage, Fenris tapped into his lycanthrope enhancement, unlocking an even greater reservoir of strength and speed. During the full moon, when the lunar influence was at its peak, he became an unstoppable force. His muscles bulged with raw power, and each movement carried the weight of a force of nature. He tore through his enemies, leaving only chaos and destruction in his wake. Rowan in fear yelled, "Shoot him down now." One of the vampires, desperate to turn the tide, unleashed a rocket-propelled grenade, RPG, towards Fenris, hoping to eliminate him with a powerful explosion. The RPG hurtled through the air, its fiery trail illuminating the night sky. In a split second, Fenris sensed the imminent danger and tapped into his latent magical abilities. As the RPG approached, he summoned his power, channeling it into a protective barrier that materialized around him and Lena. The barrier crackled with energy, forming a translucent shield just in time to intercept the explosive projectile. The RPG collided with a magical barrier, triggering a deafening explosion that shook the surroundings. Flames erupted, sending shockwaves through the air. Dust and debris filled the atmosphere, momentarily obscuring the scene. Behind the barrier, Fenris and Lena stood unscathed, shielded from the deadly blast. The barrier absorbed the brunt of the explosion, dispersing the force and redirecting it harmlessly away from them. As the dust settled, revealing the destruction left in the RPG's wake, Fenris released the barrier, allowing it to dissipate into the night. His eyes gleamed with a mixture of awe and determination. "Well, it is best we wrap this up now," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the smoldering remains of the RPG blast. She admired Fenris' quick thinking and the power he had displayed. Fenris, looking at, finally shifted into his werewolf form. The transformation was not painful, bones realigning and muscles spasming as his human skin was shed, revealing the lupin fur beneath. He became accustomed to the pain after all the previous transformations. As Fenris fully transformed, he stood as a towering creature of the night, black fur covering his lupin body. His claws were razor-sharp, capable of rending through flesh and bone with ease. His lupin frame, standing a height of 8 feet, radiated a sense of primal dominance that struck fear into the hearts of his adversaries. The scene opens with Fenris standing alone on a moonlit battlefield, his eyes glowing with an intense golden hue. His powerful physique radiates an aura of dominance and control. The scent of blood and fear lingers in the air as an army of Victor's vampires stepped back in fear. But Fenris springs into action with supernatural agility. He effortlessly sidesteps their attacks, ducking and weaving with unmatched grace. With a lightning-fast swipe of his hand, he decapitates a vampire, sending his head soaring through the air. The supernatural soldiers pause for a moment, momentarily taken aback by Fenris' raw power, since they have only heard stories about him, and one of them have seen his terror firsthand. Now, they knew it was true and learned of it firsthand. Rowan cursed his mentor and master as he saw the towering, staggering 8 feet tall. Fenris becomes an unstoppable force. With a roar that echoes through the night, he lunges forward, tearing through the enemy ranks. Claws and fangs meet flesh and bone as he slashes and bites with unparalleled ferocity. One by one, his adversaries fall, their bodies strewn across the blood-soaked field. As the final remnants of the enemy army, along with their leader Rowan, finally gave up and fell onto the ground in fear, Fenris stands amidst the aftermath, his chest heaving with controlled breaths. Blood drips from his claws and fangs, evidence of the fierce battle that has taken place. The once pristine field now resembles a scene from a nightmare, littered with the broken bodies of those who dared to challenge the tribrid. With a growl of satisfaction, Fenris reverts to his human form, the slight pain of the transformation visible on his face. The moon begins its descent, casting a fading glow upon him. As he walks away from the battlefield, his steps steady and purposeful, the remaining enemies, if any, watch in awe and terror, realizing the futility of their attempts to bring down the unstoppable force that is Fenris, the tribrid.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500 plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.